Chapter 2679. Yi Zhong roared. Take this opportunity to get rid of them. At that moment, a group of people rushed towards the 10 blood demon puppets. They didn't expect that. Madman's blood demon domain could even deprive the blood puppets of their cultivation. However, before they even got close, they stopped and looked at the 10 blood demon puppets in shock. Roar! The 10 blood demon puppets were actually struggling and roaring on the ground. What was even more strange was that their bodies were rotting at this moment, and black smoke was rising from their bodies. What's the situation? This scene was completely out of their expectations. Yi Zhong and the others were puzzled. Sure enough, Qin Feiyang flew over with Madman. Looking at the appearance of the 10 blood demon puppets, he smiled. Everyone looked at Qin Feiyang. I thought of a question earlier. Why can the blood puppets in Fallen Valley be reborn? After careful consideration, my gaze was focused on the evil force. Because this is the only explanation. Their rebirth must be related to the special evil force in Fallen Valley. So I had a bold guess in my heart. Leaving Fallen Valley, without the support of the evil force, they might die on their own. So I went in with Madman and blasted them out. In the end, sure enough, as I expected, these blood puppets can only survive in Fallen Valley. Once they leave Fallen Valley, they will die on their own. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Amazing! Everyone looked at Qin Feiyang with admiration. He could even think of this. This brain was indeed not ordinary. Yi Zhong said proudly. Of course, don't you know whose disciple he is? What does it have to do with you? Black Dragon Ancestor Dragon directly retorted. How is it not related? He was taught by this old man. For him to be so smart, it must be this old man's credit. Old Black, you are envious. Yi Zhong smiled proudly. Envious of you? In terms of excellence, this senior's disciple is much better than your disciple. The Black Dragon Ancestor Dragon snorted. Outstanding? Other than being able to absorb the power of evil, this old man really didn't find him that outstanding. Yi Zhong sneered. Qin Feiyang and the madman looked at each other and couldn't help but shake their heads and smile bitterly. You're still in the mood to fight over this? I'm convinced. Enough. What's there to fight about? Both of your disciples are outstanding, okay? You're already so old, don't you find it embarrassing? The white-clothed woman looked at the two of them speechlessly. Hearing this, Yi Zhong and Yi Zichen's expressions immediately became extremely awkward. Below, the 10 blood demon puppets had already turned into ashes. Cough cough. Yi Zhong coughed dryly, looked at everyone and asked, Then shall we continue? Nonsense, of course we'll continue. The woman in white said. Since he could find a heaven-defying divine object, he would definitely be able to find a second one, a third one. The madman waved his hand and formed another divine power barrier, before bringing everyone into Fallen Valley. Along the way, the madman also helped Qin Feiyang devour the evil power in his body. Because the madman didn't activate the barrier when fighting with the 10 blood demon puppets, a lot of evil power was transferred into Qin Feiyang's body. Soon, they returned to the square once again. The blood demon puppets were all killed, and the square was dead silent at this moment. Let's look around. Let's see if there are any other divine objects hidden, Yi Zhong said. The group began to search the square. But Qin Feiyang suddenly turned around and looked at the blood mist on the left. It seemed that he could faintly see the mysterious blood shadow. What are you doing? The madman looked at him suspiciously. Looks like it's not an illusion, Qin Feiyang whispered. The madman was slightly taken aback and asked doubtfully, What's not an illusion? Blood shadow. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. Blood shadow. The madman was taken aback. Yes. As early as when I encountered the first blood demon puppet, I found a blood shadow. But at that time, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, so I didn't pay much attention to it. But just now, I saw that blood shadow over there again. Seeing it twice, it's definitely not a trick of the eyes, Qin Feiyang secretly said. The madman followed Qin Feiyang's gaze but found nothing. However, he didn't doubt it, because he understood Qin Feiyang. Since Qin Feiyang said there was a blood shadow, then there must be one. However, why would there be a mysterious blood shadow in the Fallen Valley? What was the true body of this figure? It could actually wander in the fallen valley. The two didn't make a sound, but secretly paid attention. There's nothing. A moment later, Yi Zhong and the others turned the square upside down, but they didn't even find a legendary divine artifact or secret art. Then let's continue, the madman said. The group of people continued to circle around Fallen Valley, searching every inch of the area. Soon, they encountered a group of blood puppets, but they weren't blood demon puppets, so they were quickly dealt with. In the blink of an eye, another 2 months passed. For example, there were now over 1,000 legendary and supreme level artifacts. It was the same for secret arts. And now, they were already 1,000 miles deep into the Fallen Valley. The number of blood puppets they encountered was also increasing. Among them, there was no lack of blood demon puppets. If they could avoid them, they would avoid them. If they couldn't avoid them, they would fight. If they couldn't win, they would use the old method to lure the blood demon puppets out of the Fallen Valley and let them perish on their own. Along the way, there were scares but no dangers. On this day, they found a cave halfway up the mountain. The cave was about 10 feet big. It was filled with evil power. Originally, they didn't have much hope. But when they landed in front of the cave, they sensed a sealed aura. If there was a sealed aura, then there must be a heaven-defying divine artifact. Going quickly, the black dragon ancestral Gragon led the way and ran into the cave. Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang, the black dragon ancestral Gragon, who had just entered the cave, immediately let out a miserable cry and flew out. Qin Feiyang and the others, who were following behind, were also caught off guard and were sent flying by the black dragon ancestral Gragon. Bang bang bang! The group of people rolled on the ground below in a sorry state. What's going on? Everyone got up and looked at the cave above them in bewilderment. It seems to be a person, the black dragon ancestral Gragon said in a deep voice. A person? Everyone was stunned. Apart from them, how could there be anyone else here? Yi Zhong looked at the black dragon ancestral Gragon and asked, "Are you sure you didn't see wrongly? That person attacked too quickly. I didn't see clearly. But I can feel that it is indeed the aura of a human." The black dragon ancestral Gragon frowned. There's always a first come, first served rule in everything. Suddenly, a lazy voice sounded in the cave above. This voice, Qin Feiyang and Frenzy were stunned. Yi Zhong and the others were also stunned. This voice was too familiar. As soon as the voice sounded, a young man in tattered clothes appeared at the entrance of the cave. There was a green foxtail in the corner of his mouth, and he looked sleepy and yawning. There was also a palm-sized snow python on his shoulder. There was no need to think about it. The man in front of them was the mysterious young man that even Yi Zhong couldn't do anything about. Qin Feiyang said in surprise, "Why are you here? Since you can all be here, what's so strange about me being here?" The young man yawned again and again, as if he was still sleepy. "No. Why aren't you afraid of the evil power here?" That was the main point. One had to know that they were able to enter Fallen Valley, because the madman was able to absorb the evil power here. But this young man could also come in. Moreover, there was not even a shadow of a barrier around him. His entire body was enveloped by the evil power. But looking at him, he didn't seem to be uncomfortable at all. That was strange. Could it be that this person was also able to absorb the evil power here like Frenzy? He can't absorb the evil power here. Frenzy's pupils suddenly shrank as he transmitted his voice. And Qin Feiyang and the others were surprised. Look carefully. This evil power can't enter his body at all. Frenzy secretly said. Everyone was shocked. The young man seemed to be made of iron again. The evil power wandering around his body couldn't enter his body at all. Even the snow python on his shoulder was the same. How did he do it? One had to know. This evil power was pervasive and unstoppable. But it couldn't enter the young man's body? Look, Blood Dragon Ancestral Dragon suddenly roared and stared at the young man's left hand. In the young man's left hand, he was holding a palm-sized iron box. There was a very obvious sealing aura on it. A palm-sized iron box. This must be a heaven-defying secret art. Whether it was Yi Zhong and the others, or Qin Feiyang and Frenzy, their eyes were full of desire. The heaven-defying secret arts of hell are even rarer than the heaven-defying artifacts. We have come to hell so many times, but we have only obtained one heaven-defying secret art. Ancestral Dragon transmitted his voice. So little? Qin Feiyang and Frenzy were surprised. That's right. I believe you also know that the Sunset Divine Bow and other heaven-defying artifacts were all found by us in hell. Think about it, we can find such heaven-defying artifacts, but we can only find one. How rare is it? But now, it actually fell into the hands of this person. Ancestral Dragon's tone was very gloomy. Qin Feiyang secretly said, "Then who did you give the heaven-defying secret art to?" Of course it was Dragon Sovereign. But Lord Dragon Sovereign didn't cultivate it. It seems to have been given to Her Highness. Ancestral Dragon transmitted his voice. Her Highness? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback and asked, Her Highness the Princess. He had fought with Princess Dragons more than once, but why had he never seen her use a heaven-defying secret art? Not Her Highness the Princess, but His Highness the Prince. Ancestral Dragon secretly said, What? Prince? Qin Feiyang and Frenzy looked at each other. Yes, Prince. Ancestral Dragon nodded. This, Qin Feiyang and Frenzy were stunned. Dragon Sovereign and Dragon God actually had a son? Why had they never heard of it before? Let's not talk about this first. Hurry up and think of a way to snatch this heaven-defying secret art from this person. Ancestral Dragon secretly said. It seemed that he was determined to get it. Chapter 2680. Snatch it from his hands. Hearing Ancestral Dragon's words, everyone fell silent, including Qin Feiyang and Madman. To be honest, they didn't want to become enemies with the young man, because the young man's strength was obvious to all, and they couldn't afford to offend him. Moreover, what they saw before might only be the tip of the iceberg. Besides, the young man had always taken care of Qin Feiyang, and with Qin Feiyang's character, he wouldn't do anything ungrateful. As for Yi Zhong, needless to say, he had already fought with the young man and personally experienced the young man's strength. It was very irrational to offend this person, but this heaven-defying divine art was indeed too tempting. What are you afraid of? Although his methods are strong, he is now in the Nether King's hell. Even if he has a heaven-defying divine item and a heaven-defying divine art, he will still be restricted. In other words, he is just an ordinary person now. We can join hands and get rid of him. Ancestral Dragon transmitted. That's right. This person's origin is unknown, and his motive for entering the Dragon God Palace is also unknown. In the future, he is very likely to be a strong enemy of us dragons. Now that we have the chance, it's good to get rid of him. The woman in white said. Yi Zhong hesitated for a moment. He turned to Qin Feiyang and sent a voice transmission. Li Buer, what do you think? Ancestral Dragon, and the others also looked at Qin Feiyang. Because all along, the relationship between Qin Feiyang and the young man was somewhat unfathomable. Although Yi Zhong personally went to investigate, and the two were just strangers, it was really hard to judge whether it was true or not. Ancestral Dragon's eyes flashed and transmitted. Yi Zhong, this is also a good opportunity to test Li Buer. What do you mean? Yi Zhong secretly asked. If he agrees to help now, it proves that he has nothing to do with the young man. But if he doesn't agree, it proves that they were lying to you before. Ancestral Dragon said. Yi Zhong raised his eyebrows. After interacting with him for so long, he understood quite a bit about this disciple of his. He was a young man who knew how to repay kindness. Even if he had only met the youth by chance, based on the care the youth had given him in the Dragon God Palace, he would not attack the youth. And this was something that Yi Zhong knew, but not the other ancestral dragons. Furthermore, in the eyes of the ancestral dragons, it was only right for them to intervene. Because humans were just that selfish. Even family members would stab each other in the back for the sake of treasures. What's more, it was just a chance encounter. Moreover, what they were facing now was a heaven-defying divine art. They did not believe that there was anyone in the world who could resist this temptation. If you want to fight, I won't object. But I can't do it. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and shook his head. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon said solemnly, You are indeed related to him. Think what you want. In any case, I can't do anything. Qin Feiyang's attitude was very firm. Being ungrateful was something he would never do. All right. After dealing with him, I'll settle the score with you. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon secretly snorted, looked up at the youth and asked, You are the Dragon God Palace's law enforcement hall master, right? Yes. The youth nodded slowly. As a member of the Dragon God Palace, you are also a member of us dragons. This heaven-defying divine object, are you going to give it to us? Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon said. The youth was stunned, thought for a while, and said, Makes sense. Then give it to me. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon stretched out his hand. Sure. The youth nodded, jumped down, and walked towards Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon. So straightforward. Everyone looked at the youth in astonishment. They thought that such an unreasonable request would anger the youth. But who would have thought that the youth would be so straightforward? Even the Black Dragon Ancestor Dragon himself was extremely surprised. It can't be. He doesn't even care about the heaven-defying divine art. Lunatic muttered. Who knows? Qin Feiyang shrugged. In short, in his eyes this youth was as elusive as a mystery. Soon, the youth walked in front of Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon and handed the iron box in his hand to him. It seems that he is still a little afraid of us dragons. Seeing this, the corners of the mouths of the various ancestral dragons could not help but raise a smile. Because other than being afraid of them dragons, there was no other reason to explain it. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon did not stand on ceremony and reached out to grab the iron box. However, at this moment, the youth raised his eyebrows, looked at Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon, and said, You really dare to take it? What? Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon was stunned, not understanding. But the youth did not speak again, and directly kicked Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon's lower abdomen. And his strength was very strong. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and his entire body flew out. This sudden scene caught the group of people off guard, and they were stunned, looking at the youth. You're courting death. When they came back to their senses, the other ancestral dragons were immediately furious. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon stabilized his body, and also rushed over in anger. How dare he play with him? But the youth turned a blind eye to the anger of the group of people, and slowly put away the iron box and said, You even dared to snatch my things. I really admire your courage. What are you being arrogant for? This is the hell of Nether King. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon roared, and the power of the dragon god rolled out, and he threw a punch at the youth. Quickly retreat. Yi Zhong looked at Frenzy and Qin Feiyang, and shouted. Whoosh! At that moment, Qin Feiyang and Frenzy retreated quickly. Wang Ming and Yang Li followed beside the two of them, protecting them. I know that we are in the hell of Nether King now. I don't need you to remind me. The young man yawned and slowly raised his arm, catching the Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon's fist with ease. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon's fist immediately stopped in the void. What? Everyone turned pale with fright. One must know. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon's punch was a furious one, and one could imagine the strength. However, the young man was able to block the punch so easily. It was simply too unbelievable. How is this possible? Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon experienced it more clearly. He felt that his punch was like hitting cotton, and there was nowhere to exert force. Boring. The youth shook his head. With a slight shake of his arm, Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon was forced back, and blood poured out of his mouth. This scene was undoubtedly even more shocking. With a slight shake of his arm, Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon vomited blood. They couldn't help but wonder if the youth was really at the Great Perfection 9 Heavens state. Let me make a statement. Although I am the Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall of the Dragon God Hall, I have nothing to do with you dragons. So don't use the dragons to pressure me. With that, the youth turned around and looked at the depths of Fallen Valley, as if he was about to leave. Kill him. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon roared. Boom. The youth in blood-red clothes, and the others immediately released their auras, and attacked the youth. Why can't you dragons change this bad habit? Do you think everyone has to submit to you? The young man frowned slightly. His feet moved, and his entire body suddenly became ethereal. He was like a floating ghost, and no one could catch a trace of him. Bang, bang, bang. Several breaths later, the young man stopped in his tracks. He was calm and composed, and there was not a single wound on his body. However, the various ancestral dragons were blasted flying successively, while blood sprayed violently from their mouths, and they were in an extremely sorry state. "I'll go. This is too strong." Madman was dumbfounded. "Yeah, he is already so strong that there is no justice in this world." Qin Feiyang sighed. As for others, the longer one interacted with them, the clearer one would understand them. However, this young man was the exact opposite. The more time they spent together, the more unfathomable he became. "I'm warning you. If you dare to attack again, don't blame me for not showing you any mercy." The young man glanced at the 8 ancestral dragons. His eyes were still unfocused, but the ancestral dragons felt as though they were being stared at by the god of death. They couldn't help but feel fear. Ancestral dragon Black Dragon clenched his fists. This feeling of fear and this attitude of contempt almost drove him crazy. To think that he, an ancestral dragon, would actually feel fear? To think that he, an ancestral dragon, actually dared to look down on him? This was a disgrace. Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon suddenly roared. "Madman, activate your blood demon domain." "That's not good." Madman frowned. "Why? You don't even listen to my orders. Are you trying to rebel?" Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon roared like a crazy beast. "All right." Madman nodded helplessly and looked at the young man. "You see, I was forced. If you want to find trouble later, go find my master. Don't look for me." "Ah." The young man looked at Madman in shock. This kid was quite interesting. "You gave in before we even started. Can't you be more promising?" Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon was naturally furious when he heard Madman's words. Wasn't this embarrassing for him? Can being more promising be eaten? Madman didn't think much of it. He activated his blood demon domain and enveloped the surroundings. The young man's cultivation instantly fell to the half-step 9th heaven realm. "I want to see how you can still be arrogant now." Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon smiled sinisterly as he activated his Supreme Tier God technique. A huge black dragon shadow charged towards the young man with a monstrous dragon aura. "Sigh. I already told you not to attack. Why won't you listen?" The young man shook his head and sighed. He raised his hand and pointed in the air. Heaven-breaking finger. As his voice fell, a terrifying god power roared out. The aura destroyed the surroundings. The blood demon domain was instantly shattered. "What the hell?" Madman's face was filled with shock. The blood demon domain was instantly shattered? This heaven-breaking finger, what rank was it? It was too terrifying. Qin Feiyang's heart was also filled with shock. The blood demon domain was a supreme tier god technique. To break open the blood demon domain, one had to at least have a heaven-defying god technique. In other words, this heaven-breaking finger was a heaven-defying god technique. But that wasn't right. The Nether King Hell had the power of laws. One couldn't activate a heaven-defying god technique, or they would be killed by the power of laws. But there was no power of laws descending from the sky. In other words, this heaven-breaking finger wasn't a heaven-defying god technique. If it wasn't a heaven-defying god technique, then why was it able to shatter the blood demon domain? It was too strange, no. There was no need to describe it as strange. It was strange. This scene couldn't be explained with common sense. Chapter 2681. Boom. Sky-piercing finger was terrifying. With a wail, the black dragon shadow transformed by the ancestral dragon of the black dragon shattered in the void. Immediately after, sky-piercing finger hit ancestral dragon. Puff. Ancestral dragon spurted out a mouthful of blood and flew out like a kite with a broken string. The blood puppet's chest had also been punched out by the heaven-piercing finger, and blood was gushing out. Why is this happening? His cultivation is suppressed so much, but he can still break the blood demon domain and cause such serious injuries to Old Black? The ancestral dragons found it hard to accept this scene. Not to mention them, even Frenzy and Qin Feiyang didn't want to believe it. Was this real? Was this really not a dream? The rule power didn't descend, which proved that sky-piercing finger wasn't a heaven-defying technique. If it wasn't a heaven-defying technique, how could it break the blood demon domain? One had to know. After being suppressed by the blood demon domain, the young man's cultivation was only at the half-step 9th heaven realm. So, even if sky-piercing finger was a supreme technique, it was impossible to break the blood demon domain. That was unimaginable. The young man seemed to have done a very simple thing. His expression didn't change at all. Bang! When Ancestral Dragon fell, the young man took a step forward and instantly landed in front of Ancestral Dragon. Immediately after, the young man raised his foot and stepped on Ancestral Dragon's face. The force was great. Ancestral Dragon's face was deformed and his bones were broken. A deadly sense of danger rose in his heart. Ancestral Dragon panicked. If the young man used a little more force, his head would definitely explode, and his divine soul would be shattered. Although he left his divine soul outside, he was unwilling to let it end like this. Because he, the dragons, had yet to find a heaven-defying treasure. Are you still arrogant? The young man yawned and said indifferently. You. Ancestral Dragon was embarrassed and angry. As a dignified Ancestral Dragon, when was he trampled under someone's foot like this? I'm asking you, are you still arrogant? The young man spoke again. His tone was as calm as ever, but in Ancestral Dragon's ears, it was like the knell of death. Not arrogant, not arrogant. Ancestral Dragon hurriedly waved his hand, unable to hide the fear in his heart. You're so despicable. I won't feel comfortable if I don't beat you. The young man shook his head. He finally let the Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon off, and ignored Qin Feiyang and the others. He turned around and walked into the depths without looking back. The Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon got up and glared at the young man's back with resentment. I've never seen such a perverted person. Madman shook his head and exhaled. Don't say it. Previously, he was especially nervous, afraid that the young man would come looking for trouble with him. Yeah, everyone says that we're perverts, but he's the real pervert. Qin Feiyang mumbled, but before he could finish his sentence, Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon suddenly leaped in front of Qin Feiyang, raised his hand, and ruthlessly slapped Qin Feiyang's face. Pa! An ear-piercing slap could be heard. Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. Yi Zhong and the others were taken aback and quickly looked over as well, when they saw the Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon glaring at Qin Feiyang in anger. When they saw the eye-catching palm print on Qin Feiyang's face, and half of his face swollen, everyone was shocked. What are you doing? Madman reacted and immediately glared at the Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon. Pa! The Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon ruthlessly slapped Madman again and said angrily, as a disciple, how dare you scold your master, who gave you the guts? Madman touched his burning face, and his face turned gloomy as he stared at the Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon. You still dare to glare at me? Killing intent suddenly appeared in the Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon's eyes. Old Black, what are you doing? The white-clothed woman saw that the situation wasn't good, and quickly went forward to pull the Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon. Let go, I'm going to kill this traitorous disciple. The Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon roared. Who said that Madman can change the fate of us dragons? Who said that Madman can only be won over? Aren't you forcing him to rebel now? The white-clothed woman secretly said. When the Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon heard this, his body shook and his mind became clear. What was he doing? Why did he do such a foolish thing? Old Black, you have to give me an explanation today. What did Li Boer do wrong? You want to slap him in front of everyone? Yi Zhong's gloomy voice sounded. The eyelids of the various Ancestral Dragon twitched. There was no need to look at Yi Zhong's expression. Just from his tone, they knew that this old man was angry. Yi Zhong was indeed very angry now. He couldn't beat the young man, so he vented his anger on his disciple? How could there be such an unreasonable thing? If the Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon's slap was on his face. With his indifferent personality, he might not be so angry. But Qin Feiyang was different. First of all, Qin Feiyang was his disciple. Now that he was beaten for no reason, if he continued to remain silent, then how could he still have the face to be someone else's master? If this spread out in the future, he would be laughed at. His disciple was beaten, and didn't even dare to make a sound. Secondly, Qin Feiyang was the old master's savior. If anything were to happen to Qin Feiyang, not to mention his own conscience, even the old man wouldn't let him off. So, if the Black Dragon ancestral Gragon didn't give him a reasonable explanation, he wouldn't give up. Yi Zhong, this is a misunderstanding. He was just impulsive. It's not as complicated as you think. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon let out an unwilling roar, and his physical body and divine soul were immediately reduced to ashes. The divine sense that was attacking Qin Feiyang was instantly obliterated by the power of laws. Phew! Yi Zhong finally heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that. When I return to the divine prefecture, it will be my end. Qin Feiyang smirked slightly. Let's wait and see whose end it will be. Whoosh! Then, Qin Feiyang looked at the woman in white, and the other ancestral dragons with a cold gleam in his eyes. The young man in crimson clothes said in a deep voice, Li Bu-er, it's better to keep a low profile. Am I not keeping a low profile enough? Although Qin Feiyang was only at the 9th heaven state, his aura was aggressive. The ancestral dragons could not help but feel a sense of fear in their hearts. Li Bu-er, Old Black's physical body and divine soul are gone. You should be appeased by now. Yi Zhong quickly stepped forward and stopped Qin Feiyang when he saw that. Master, you've spoiled them too much. You've made them think that you're easy to bully. With your strength, why do you have to care about their attitude? A bunch of trash who can't even comprehend the power of laws. Qin Feiyang scolded mercilessly. You! The ancestral dragons trembled and roared. Yi Zhong, is this the disciple you taught? Don't you know how to respect the old and cherish the young? If you want to gain the respect of others, you have to know how to respect others first. Qin Feiyang said lightly. Good. You're amazing. The ancestral dragons nodded, and looked like they were going crazy with hatred. Cut the crap. Do you want to get lost or do you want me to send you away? Lunatic said. What do you mean? The ancestral dragons raised their eyebrows. My meaning is obvious. With a thought, Lunatic shrank the barrier, and the ancestral dragons were immediately abandoned outside the barrier. You! The ancestral dragons glared at Lunatic angrily. You don't have the ability to enter the Fallen Valley, and you don't have any awareness at all. Sorry, I can't serve you guys. Think of a way yourselves. Lunatic was disdainful. The ancestral dragons suddenly trembled. That's right. They still had to rely on Lunatic to search for treasures in the Fallen Valley. If they offended Lunatic, and he didn't help them devour the evil force in their bodies, and continue to search for heaven-defying treasures, wouldn't this trip to hell be in vain? Lunatic, sorry, it was our fault just now. We apologize to you. The ancestral dragons gave in. There was nothing they could do about it. So far, they had found 3 heaven-defying treasures. The first one was the heaven-defying treasure in King Yu's hands. But facing the powerful King Yu, they were helpless. The second one was also given to Lunatic. With Lunatic's current attitude, he definitely wouldn't give it to them. The other ancestral dragons also looked coldly at Lunatic before turning to chase after the white-clothed woman. When they caught up to the white-clothed woman, the blood-red youth asked unwillingly, Are we really going to give up just like that? Give up? How is that possible? They will go to the divine demonic forest sooner or later. We will go there and wait for them. The white-clothed woman smiled sinisterly. Good idea. Their eyes lit up, and they quickly disappeared into the blood mist. Now, they had only gone 1,000 miles into Fallen Valley. This distance was only a matter of a few breaths for the ancestral dragons. Therefore, even without Lunatic's barrier, their lives would not be in danger. As for the evil force that entered their bodies, although it would take a long time to refine it, it would not affect their strength. Sigh. Yi Zhong could not help but let out a sigh. Are you sympathizing with them? There's no need. Unreasonable people like them don't deserve any sympathy. Lunatic shook his head. Yi Zhong sighed. Although they are unreasonable, they are still companions. Companions? To put it bluntly, you treat them as companions, but they treat you as a servant. Qin Feiyang said. Don't talk nonsense. At least Dragon Sovereign treats this old man well. Yi Zhong stared at Qin Feiyang and laughed. She also values your strength and ability. Moreover, in my opinion, Dragon Sovereign does not treat you as one of her own. Think about it. You created the Dragon God Hall. How much contribution have you made to the dragons? And every time, you would come to hell to help the dragons look for heaven-defying treasures. But in the end, you did not get a single heaven-defying treasure? No. You have done so much. Why didn't Dragon Sovereign give it to you? That is because you are an outsider. To be honest, I feel that it is not worth it for you. Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. Yi Zhong went silent. I also think that what Li Bu said makes sense. Think about the two of us, whether it is ability or strength. We are above the ancestral dragons. But after so many years, what have we gotten? Take the Sunset Divine Bow and the other 10 heaven-defying treasures for example. Isn't it all because of the two of us? But in the end, Dragon Sovereign did not say anything and directly gave these treasures to the 10 ancestral dragons. And the two of us who contributed the most were ignored as if we were air. Sometimes this emperor thinks, why? Just because the 10 ancestral dragons are the same as Dragon Sovereign. To be honest, I am not reconciled. The Beast Emperor shook his head and sighed. Chapter 2683. Yi Zhong looked at the Beast Emperor and said, although he didn't give us any heaven-defying treasures, he didn't use the fate contract to control us. This can be considered a form of trust. What kind of trust is this? Giving us heaven-defying treasures is true trust. The Beast Emperor sneered. Is a heaven-defying treasure that important? Yi Zhong frowned. You don't think it's important? If there is no heaven-defying treasure, would Qin Feiyang be able to live until now? How dare he be so arrogant? I'm afraid he would have been killed by the ancestral dragon in the North region. The Beast Emperor snorted. Enough. Yi Zhong waved his hand and said, you can say this to this old man, but don't say it in front of the ancestral dragon and the revered dragon. Am I that stupid? The Beast Emperor pouted. Yi Zhong smiled faintly and looked at Frenzy. Then let's go, let's continue to search. Frenzy nodded and continued to search with Qin Feiyang, and the other two. Qin Feiyang stared at the depths of Fallen Valley and suddenly said, we can't search slowly anymore. What do you mean? Frenzy Yi Zhong, and the Beast Emperor looked at him suspiciously. If it's just the few of us, it's fine to search slowly. But don't forget, there is still one more person in Fallen Valley. We have to get ahead of him and reach the deepest part. Qin Feiyang said. That's right. We can't let him reach the deepest part before us. Frenzy immediately shivered. Because there was something calling him in the deepest part. That thing might be very important to him. So, it must not fall into the hands of the young man. Master, you are faster than us. Why don't you take us and go straight to the deepest part? Qin Feiyang looked at Yi Zhong and asked. Why are you in such a hurry to go to the deepest part? Yi Zhong looked at the two of them in confusion. The Beast Emperor also had a puzzled look. No matter where it is, there are usually more treasures in the deepest part than in the periphery. So we have to be one step ahead. Frenzy said calmly. That makes sense. Yi Zhong nodded and didn't suspect anything. He immediately swept up Qin Feiyang and the others and rushed towards the deepest part of the cave. As for Wang Ming and Yang Li, they remained silent. Of course, this was Qin Feiyang's order. This was because the Beast Emperor knew the two of them very well. Every move they made could expose their identities. Thus, silence was the best solution. Qin Feiyang, tell me. Could the blood shadow you noticed be the young man? After a while, Madman suddenly sent a voice transmission to Qin Feiyang. Impossible. Qin Feiyang thought. Why? Madman was puzzled. Think about it. With his strength, is there a need for him to be sneaky? Qin Feiyang said. That makes sense. Madman nodded without leaving a trace. It seemed that this Fallen Valley was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Who knew if going to the deepest part of Fallen Valley was a blessing or a curse? Qin Feiyang turned to Yi Zhong and asked, Master, can you tell us about His Highness the Prince? His Highness the Prince. Yi Zhong was slightly taken aback and asked suspiciously, Why are you asking about him? I'm just curious. Look, I've been in the Dragon God Temple for many years, but I've never heard anything about this prince. Qin Feiyang said. Yi Zhong said, There are very few people who know about this prince to begin with. Very few. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Madman grinned. Don't tell me he's a monster that doesn't dare to meet people? Monster? Yi Zhong shook his head and smiled bitterly. It's possible to call him a monster. Qin Feiyang and Madman were even more puzzled. This prince has shown amazing talent since he was young. Before he was 100 years old, he broke through to become a god. And now, he has already entered the initial stage of the imperishable realm. Yi Zhong said. What? Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other. Initial stage of the imperishable realm. This cultivation was a bit terrifying. But becoming a god at 100 years old didn't seem to be a big deal, right? After all, Divine Dragon Island had a time array. The reason why I say he's a monster is because he can open the gate of potential with his own ability. Yi Zhong said. Madman asked. Then how many gates of potential has he opened? 8. Yi Zhong said. 8. Qin Feiyang and Madman were stunned. Every major realm had a gate of potential. Martial artist, martial master, martial ancestor, battle king, battle emperor, battle master, battle emperor, battle god. In other words, this prince had already broken through the limit of the battle god realm. Who knew better than Qin Feiyang the difficulty of opening the gate of potential? Even if there were pills like the potential pill, it still required extremely strong perseverance to successfully open it. Not to mention relying on one's own ability. According to Qin Feiyang's knowledge, only his ancestor and Zhuge Mingyang had opened the gate of potential with their own ability. His ancestor didn't say much because he didn't know much. But Zhuge Mingyang, he knew very well that he had only opened the first 2 gates. In other words, the gate of potential for martial artists and martial masters. And relying on one's own ability to open 8 gates of potential, that was unheard of. Would Yi Zhong say that this prince was a monster? If he really opened the gate of potential by himself, then he could indeed be called a monster. But was that really the case? Were there other factors in this? After all, Ice Dragon was this prince's father. It's also because this prince was born outstanding that Long Zun has always been very careful to protect him. And according to this old man's knowledge, the dragons snatching the bloodline power of Qin Feiyang and Qin Batian seems to have something to do with this prince. Yi Zhong said. Qin Feiyang was surprised. What did snatching the bloodline power of his and his ancestors have to do with this prince? It's not like it's originally related. The Beast Emperor interrupted. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang looked at the Beast Emperor again. The purple gold divine dragon is the noblest bloodline of the dragons. Even the sky dragon can't compare to it. And for the dragons, the purple gold divine dragon is also a legendary existence. Because the purple gold divine dragon is really rare. Such a big group of dragons has never given birth to a purple gold divine dragon. And suddenly one day Qin Batian appeared. With the bloodline and talent of the purple gold divine dragon, he quickly rose to fame, and his fame spread far and wide. When Long Zun heard this news, he immediately sent people to the northern region to investigate. In the end, the investigation revealed that Qin Batian's bloodline power is indeed the purple gold divine dragon. Immediately Long Zun had an idea. Strip off Qin Batian's bloodline power and integrate it into this prince's body. In this way, once the integration is successful, this prince will be the first purple gold divine dragon in the history of dragons. Furthermore, this prince himself possesses 2 types of divine dragon powers. The ice dragon power and the sky dragon power. If the purple gold divine dragon power is added, it means that he has 3 types of divine dragon power. Then his talent and achievements must be even more terrifying. But what the dragons didn't expect was that Qin Batian had the protection of a heaven-defying treasure. And he also received the recognition and help of the 4 guardians, causing Long Zun's plan to fail. The Beast Emperor said. So that's the case. Qin Feiyang muttered. He finally figured out the reason why the dragons deprived him and his ancestors' bloodline power. It turned out that, just to fulfill the prince's wish. Wait, you just said the 4 guardians. Who are these 4 guardians? Qin Feiyang looked at the Beast Emperor suspiciously. The 4 guardians are the people who guard the 4 major regions, which is the northern region, western desert, southern wasteland, and eastern tomb. Each of the 4 major regions has a guardian. Although their strength is not as good as Long Zun, it's not much different. The Beast Emperor said. The four guardians, Qin Feiyang and Madman, looked at each other. They have been in the northern region for so many years. Why haven't they heard of any guardians? These four guardians are very low-key. Even if they stand in front of you, you may not know their identity. However, they are really strong. Even when this emperor and Yi Zhong join forces, we are not a match for one of them. It is also because of these four guardians that Long Zun can't leave Divine Land. The Beast Emperor said. Very low-key? Very strong. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and muttered. A figure gradually appeared in his mind. Could it be him? The person who appeared in his mind was a dirty old man in tattered clothes. This old man was Lin Yi's master. Because this old man was ridiculously strong, even Long Zun's clone could be easily defeated. Ancestral Graygon was no match for the old man. Even when he saw the old man, Ancestral Graygon was scared and terrified. So, that old man was most likely the so-called protector. If the guardian of the northern region was really him, then Lin Yi really picked up a big bargain. Shouldn't you thank this emperor? After all, this is the truth you have been longing for a long time. The Beast Emperor's voice suddenly sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind. Qin Feiyang glanced at the Beast Emperor and transmitted his voice. I do have to thank you. Why don't you follow me? I promised to serve you like a lord. Follow you? The Beast Emperor was taken aback for a moment and secretly said, Are you dreaming? Do you think you are qualified for this emperor to follow you? Hee. Don't underestimate others, and don't overestimate yourself. There is a good saying, 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west. Today, you look down on me. Tomorrow I will make you unworthy. Qin Feiyang secretly laughed. Then, this emperor will see if you have this ability. The Beast Emperor sneered. Then you wait and see. And, don't have any ideas about Yi Zhong. He is mine. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. Yours? The Beast Emperor secretly sneered. Although you and Yi Zhong have both comprehended the law of fire, if I have to choose between you and Yi Zhong, I will definitely choose Yi Zhong without hesitation. Do you understand what I mean? Qin Feiyang smiled playfully. The Beast Emperor frowned. Of course he understood this, because Qin Feiyang's meaning was already quite obvious. Not only Yi Zhong, but even he couldn't escape. In other words, Qin Feiyang not only wanted to persuade Yi Zhong, but also wanted to subdue him. And if he dared to obstruct and affect the plan to persuade Yi Zhong, then Qin Feiyang would not hesitate to kill him. This little bastard. Deep in the Beast Emperor's heart, he couldn't help but feel a chill. He didn't expect this little bastard's ambition to be so great, that he actually wanted to subdue him. It was no wonder that even though he knew that he was a revered beast, he didn't make a move against him. He was waiting for an opportunity. Chapter 2684. Qin Feiyang's methods were obvious to all. If he continued to stay with Qin Feiyang, there might really be an accident. Should he take the initiative to leave? However, in the face of the temptation of a heaven-defying treasure, he really couldn't bear to leave. Besides, Qin Feiyang had obviously come prepared. Would he let him go so easily? No. Once he opened his mouth and said that he wanted to leave, Qin Feiyang would definitely attack him directly. In other words, he could neither leave nor stay. He was caught in a dilemma. In the past, with the chief pavilion master around, he could take care of him. But now he was alone, isolated and without help. To be honest, although he said that he didn't care about Qin Feiyang, he was actually still a little afraid. The group continued to go deeper. Along the way, they kept encountering blood puppets. The frequency of Qin Feiyang and Frenzy's attacks also began to increase. Because there was no other way. Now it was just them, Yi Zhong, Beast Emperor and Wang Ming. In front of Beast Emperor, even if Wang Ming and Frenzy attacked, they definitely wouldn't dare to use their full strength. For example, divine arts, divine weapons and battle souls. Once these things were revealed, Beast Emperor would immediately be able to see through their identities. As for Beast Emperor, he definitely wouldn't use all his strength to kill the enemy, because not only did he have to guard against Qin Feiyang, but he also had to think about how to scheme against Qin Feiyang. In other words, the only one who was really fighting with the blood puppets was Yi Zhong. Yi Zhong was indeed very strong, But he was also a person of flesh and blood. He also knew fatigue. He would also be injured. So Qin Feiyang in frenzy naturally couldn't be as relaxed as before. Boom. Crack. One day after half a month, after a tough battle, they finished off 3 blood demon puppets at the Great Perfection Ninth Heaven's realm. Their bodies were covered in wounds. Frenzy took out a life pill and threw it into his mouth. He looked at Qin Feiyang and complained, "You were too impulsive. You shouldn't have chased away the ancestral dragons. If they were still here, we wouldn't have had to do anything. Something's not right. Weren't you the one who chased them away? Why are you blaming me?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "Is it me?" Madman was startled. "Nonsense. Are you the one who told them to scram? Or am I the one who will send you scram? What are you still talking about? I can't serve you guys. You forgot so quickly." Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. "Really?" The madman smiled embarrassedly and said, "But it's not like you didn't object. Only you can bring us into the Fallen Valley. Do you think I dare to go against your words?" Qin Feiyang secretly mocked. TSK. Madman secretly despised him. All right. Without them, we can still reach the deepest part. It's just a little hard work." Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. After slightly healing their injuries, they continued on their journey. They were exceptionally careful along the way. Whenever they encountered a blood golem, they would take a detour. Wang Ming suddenly said telepathically, "Seriously, we should team up with the youngsters." "That's right. The youngsters aren't afraid of the power of evil. If we team up with him, it'll be easier for us to reach the deepest part. It's all the ancestral dragon's fault. He's brainless. We can't wait to curry favor with such a person, but he still wants to snatch a heaven-defying treasure." Yang Li also sighed inwardly. When Madman heard their conversation, he glanced at Qin Feiyang and transmitted his voice. "Say, with your relationship with him, if you meet him again and see that the ancestral dragons have already left, will you choose to travel with us?" "How would I know?" Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. About 3 months later, the 6 of them appeared in front of a valley. The entrance to the valley was very narrow and only allowed 1 person to pass. "Should we rest here for a while?" Although they tried their best to avoid the blood golems in the past 3 months, they still couldn't avoid a series of tough battles. All of them were in a sorry state, especially Yi Zhong. In order to protect everyone, he always rushed to the front. "Let's see if the valley is safe first," Yi Zhong said solemnly. In the past 3 months, they had faced at least 8,000 blood golems, if not 10,000. Not to mention Qin Feiyang and the others, even he couldn't handle it. The group entered the valley one after another. Soon, they figured out the situation of the valley. The valley was very large, and the entire valley was circular with a diameter of several miles. It was flat and looked very spacious, but there were no traces of the blood golems in the valley. They immediately sat cross-legged in the valley and took out the divine power pill and life pill to recover their divine power while healing their injuries. However, what Qin Feiyang and the others didn't notice was that the madman seemed to be in a trance when they entered the valley. "What's going on?" The madman gradually frowned. He wanted to calm down and rest, but he couldn't get rid of that state. Moreover, the power that had been calling him also disappeared after entering the valley. The madman opened his eyes and scanned the valley again. Unintentionally, his gaze fell on the entrance to the valley. "Not good. There's danger." Immediately, the madman's body trembled and he stood up. Startled, Qin Feiyang and the others hurriedly opened their eyes and looked at the madman. "Look." The madman pointed at the entrance of the valley, as if he had seen something terrifying. Qin Feiyang and the others hurriedly looked over, and their hair stood on end. The entrance to the valley had actually disappeared at some point. That's right. The entrance to the valley had disappeared. What's going on? Wang Ming was bewildered. They had clearly come in from there. But where was the entrance? "Let's go and take a look." The 6 of them walked over cautiously. There was no danger, but the entrance had indeed disappeared and was replaced by a complete mountain. "Are we hallucinating?" Yang Li frowned. Wang Ming directly stretched out his hand and pinched Yang Li's arm hard. "It hurts. What are you doing?" Yang Li glared at Wang Ming. Wang Ming said, Since you feel pain, it's not an illusion. Let's look around again and see if we remembered wrongly. The entrance isn't here, Yi Zhong said in a deep voice. The group circled around the valley, but they still couldn't find the entrance to the valley. The entire valley seemed to be one entity. Go up. The Beast Emperor looked at the sky above the valley and shouted. At this moment, he could not remain calm either. If this had happened anywhere else, with his strength, he wouldn't have been so nervous. But this was Fallen Valley. Fallen Valley was a very strange place to begin with. Now that such a strange scene had appeared, who could remain calm? Swoosh. Immediately, Yi Zhong waved his hand and swept up the few of them. Like leaping onto roofs and walls, they quickly flew up the valley. Bang! However, when the group was about to reach the peak, an invisible force blasted from above. They were caught off guard. The few of them were slapped down on the spot and smashed into the valley in a sorry state, spitting blood from their mouths. None of them checked on their injuries. They quickly got up and looked up in bewilderment. The sky was filled with blood mist, and they could not see clearly. Furthermore, the invisible force from before had disappeared without a trace, and they could not sense its aura. What's going on? Wang Ming asked in shock. But no one answered his question because no one knew. Qin Feiyang shouted. Frenzy enlarged the enchantment. Frenzy nodded. Divine power surged out, and the divine power boundary of about 1,000 feet began to expand. In just a few breaths, the enchantment enveloped the entire valley. The evil force in the surroundings was also pushed out of the valley by the enchantment. Without the evil force obstructing their line of sight, the entire ancient era was clearly presented in front of them. When they saw the entire valley, Qin Feiyang and the others could not help but feel their scalps go numb. The mountains on all sides were connected into one, like an iron bucket. Furthermore, there was a blood-red light curtain above, sealing off the sky above the entire valley. In other words, they had unknowingly entered an iron bucket-like cage. This old man wants to see who is deliberately mystifying things. Yi Zhong roared, a cold light surging in his eyes. He suddenly leaped up, divine power surging out of Frenzy's enchantment, and punched the light curtain. Bang! For example, Qin Feiyang. Just as he was about to kill a dozen blood puppets, another dozen blood puppets appeared behind him. Puff! One of the blood puppets was a blood eagle. Its claw was on Qin Feiyang's back. Its sharp claws directly tore off a piece of flesh. It's too much. If we keep fighting like this, even if they can't kill us, we'll die of exhaustion. Wang Ming roared. Not only Qin Feiyang, but Wang Ming, Yang Li, the Beast Emperor, and Yi Zhong also had a lot of wounds on their bodies. Hold on. Fallen Valley is a forbidden area in hell. Very few creatures dare to enter. So the number of blood puppets here is limited, Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. As soon as he said this, a group of blood puppets suddenly rushed toward Lunatic with bloody light surging in their eyes. You're courting death. Lunatic didn't make a move. After all, he had to open the blood demon domain and maintain the divine force barrier at the same time to block the evil power. But that didn't mean that he couldn't make a move while maintaining the blood demon domain and the divine force barrier. He would try not to make a move if he could. Boom! The third move of the blood demon appeared. The Demon King's statue was wearing armor and holding a sky halberd. It was full of demonic energy and charged toward the group of blood puppets. The group of blood puppets was instantly killed. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang and the others also breathed a sigh of relief and continued to kill the blood puppets around them. Corpses flew everywhere, and blood dyed the valley red. Beast Emperor! Yi Zhong shouted. The Beast Emperor understood. The fire dharma of the two rolled out, and the valley below immediately turned into a sea of fire. Whether it was the corpses of the blood puppets, or their blood, they immediately began to burn. Because as long as there was a little bit of flesh left, the blood puppets would be reborn again. So they had to be burned clean. As for the Beast Emperor, he didn't want to go all out. But there was no other way now. Blood puppets continuously poured out of the crack. No one knew how many were left. If he didn't go all out, he would probably die here before finding the heaven-defying treasure. Moreover, he was different from the chief pavilion master. There were no more divine souls outside. If he died here, it would be a real death. He didn't want to die. Time passed slowly. An hour later, blood puppets were still pouring out of the crack above. It seemed endless. Li Buer, didn't you say that the blood puppets are limited? Why is it still not over? The Beast Emperor roared. How would I know? Qin Feiyang was also extremely anxious. In an hour, they had killed at least tens of thousands of blood puppets. Logically speaking, the blood puppets in the Fallen Valley should be almost all killed. But looking at the current situation, it didn't seem to be what he thought. At the same time, in the end, after an hour of hard fighting, Qin Feiyang and the others' injuries were getting worse and worse. You're really unreliable. The Beast Emperor glared at Qin Feiyang, then looked at Yi Zhong and roared. Go and try and see if you can force your way out of the crack. Okay. Yi Zhong nodded. The gloves on his hands emitted a dazzling divine light, and his body was also filled with a terrifying aura. He leaped, crushing one blood puppet after another, and headed straight for the crack above. However, before he could get close, another invisible force emerged from the light curtain and blasted toward Yi Zhong. I don't believe that I can't deal with you. Yi Zhong roared angrily. His divine power roared and blasted forward. One had to know that the gloves in his hands were supreme-level artifacts. With the power of a supreme-level artifact, his punch was enough to destroy heaven and earth. Boom! However, when his fists collided with the invisible force, cracks appeared on the golden glove with a cracking sound. Bang! And Yi Zhong's entire body was smashed to the ground like a cannonball, blood spurting out of his mouth. This, Qin Feiyang and the others were dumbfounded. Yi Zhong had used a supreme-level artifact, but he still couldn't block that invisible force? What the hell is this? It can even damage a supreme-level artifact. Yi Zhong got up, looked at the cracks on the gloves, and then looked up at the light curtain above. His heart was also in turmoil. It seems that even if there's a crack, we can't rush out. We can only fight to the death. I only hope that the blood puppets in Fallen Valley can be exterminated quickly, Qin Feiyang said in a low voice. When Yi Zhong and the others heard this, their expressions couldn't help but turn serious. This wasn't a joke, nor was it child's play. This was a battle of life and death. No, I can't die here. You bastards, go to hell! Beast Emperor roared fiercely, and a huge beast shadow rushed out of his body. It was the shadow of a fire Qilin. Flames surged around his body, and his divine power could destroy the world. He pounced on the blood puppets in front of him. Wherever he went, all the blood puppets were turned to ashes. This wasn't Beast Emperor's true body, but the manifestation of a divine art. And it was a supreme-level divine art. Wang Ming looked at Beast Emperor and said telepathically, Young Lord, should Yang Li and I continue to hide? Yang Li also looked at Qin Feiyang. Although their identities would be exposed if they revealed their trump cards, their lives would be in danger if they continued like this. Compared to exposing their identities, their lives were definitely more important. Try to protect yourself first. If there's really no other way in the end, then you too can make a move. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said to himself. All right. The two of them nodded, but right after that Wang Ming shouted, Watch your back. Qin Feiyang was instantly alarmed. While he was pondering, a dozen blood puppets attacked from behind. Those white and sharp fangs, and those cold gleaming claws made one shudder. Qin Feiyang immediately activated the heavenly god's armor without hesitation. Boom! When the blood puppets arrived, Qin Feiyang was sent flying on the spot, blood gushing out. But fortunately, he was protected by the heavenly god's armor, so he wasn't fatally injured. How many blood puppets are there? Qin Feiyang was furious. He used the heavenly dragon's 9 steps, and a heavenly dragon roared and charged at the blood puppets. The blood puppets were crushed one after another. Their flesh and blood floated down, and were burned to ashes by the sea of fire formed by the Dharma of fire below. However, there were even larger blood puppets pouring out of the crack. Slowly, even Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel despair. From the looks of it, there seemed to be no end to killing. Even if you have 1,000 years, you won't be able to kill all the blood puppets in Fallen Valley. Suddenly, a sinister laugh sounded from the light screen above, filled with a bloodthirsty smell. Who is it? Qin Feiyang, and the others were shocked and immediately looked up. But the light screen was shrouded in a thick blood mist, and they couldn't see the person who spoke at all. Instead of worrying about who I am, why don't you think about how to escape from here? The sinister laugh sounded again, and it became erratic. Sure enough, other than the young man, there is someone else in Fallen Valley. Qin Feiyang's face was gloomy. Suddenly, a blood shadow appeared in his mind, and he said in surprise, "Are you the blood shadow that has been spying on us in the dark?" Blood shadow? Yi Zhong and the Beast Emperor were taken aback. What blood shadow? Why didn't they know? Yeah, I didn't expect to be discovered by you. You are quite capable. The mysterious blood shadow said in surprise. It's really him. Qin Feiyang's heart trembled and he shouted, "Who the hell are you? What is the purpose of doing this?" "Who am I? I am the ruler of Fallen Valley. Everything in Fallen Valley is under my control. As for the purpose, of course it's to kill you and turn you into my blood puppets. I admire you very much. Especially you, Li Bu-er, and that human called Madman. When you become my blood puppets, I believe that you will be very powerful." The mysterious blood shadow snickered. It was like a ferocious ghost laughing. It was extremely terrifying. Compared with Yi Zhong, Beast Emperor, Madman and Wang Ming, his injuries were much better, because he had fused with the flame of life. The power of the bloodline also had an extremely strong recovery ability. In addition, the divine life pills he had taken all had 4 dragon-shaped core qi. Therefore, they were not as pathetic as Yi Zhong and the others. I'm very calm. Otherwise, I wouldn't have placed all my hopes on you. Now, only you can break out of this deadlock. I know that if I use all my trump cards, your identity will definitely be exposed. But don't forget that, like me, you don't have a divine soul outside. Once you die here, you'll be completely dead. Think carefully, which is more important, your identity or your life. The Beast Emperor roared. Qin Feiyang muttered as he fought with the blood puppet. To be honest, although he was in a better state than Yi Zhong and the others, he was also extremely exhausted after half a month of continuous fighting. He even had the urge to immediately lie down on the ground and have a good sleep. Very tired, right? Mentally and physically exhausted, right? Hee hee. Don't be in such a hurry to collapse. The warm-up isn't over yet. I've been in Fallen Valley for countless years, and it's very rare for me to encounter something so fun. So you must play with me until I'm satisfied. The mysterious blood shadow's voice rang out again. Who's in the mood to play with you? The Beast Emperor roared. That's not up to you, because I have the final say in this game. Only I have the right to announce the end. The mysterious blood shadow laughed out loud. Bastard! The Beast Emperor was furious. Don't be impulsive. Yi Zhong roared. These divine life pills, take them. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and thousands of divine life pills flew toward the Beast Emperor. I have. Yi Zhong was just about to refuse, but then his eyes suddenly widened. These divine life pills actually had 4 dragon-shaped core auras. 4 dragon-shaped core auras. Yi Zhong was also taken aback, extremely astonished. Divine life pills with 4 dragon-shaped core auras were extremely rare even in the divine land, because he could refine pills with 4 dragon-shaped core auras. Although they had been together for a long time, every time Qin Feiyang and Frenzy took the pills, they would quickly put them into their mouths. This could also be considered a deliberate cover-up. Therefore, Yi Zhong and the Beast Emperor didn't notice. Wait. Yi Zhong was able to concoct a pill with 4 dragon-shaped pill energies. And as Yi Zhong's disciple, Qin Feiyang has pills with 4 dragon-shaped core auras. It's normal. The Beast Emperor came back to his senses and muttered to himself before putting away the divine life pills. Although he was very unwilling to accept Qin Feiyang's kindness, he had no choice. The situation was critical now. These divine life pills that Qin Feiyang gave him would be of great help to him, because his own divine life pills only had 3 dragon-shaped core auras at most. Although it was only 1 dragon-shaped core aura, the effect was worlds apart. After the Beast Emperor took the pills, he took one on the spot. Then as he charged towards the blood puppets, he shot a glance at Yi Zhong and snorted coldly. Yi Zhong, aren't you being too generous? What do you mean? Yi Zhong frowned. We've known each other for so many years. Usually, when I ask you for a little pill, you're reluctant to give it to me. But now, you're giving Li Bu'er so many. As expected of your disciple, the treatment is indeed different. The Beast Emperor was dissatisfied. Yi Zhong raised his eyebrows and said, I didn't give these pills to him. What? You didn't give them to him? The Beast Emperor was stunned. While he was stunned, 2 blood puppets rushed in front of him and almost smashed his head with their claws. The Beast Emperor quickly came back to his senses and killed the 2 blood puppets. He said in surprise, Then where did he get these divine life pills? I don't know either. Yi Zhong shook his head and glanced at Qin Feiyang, who was fighting with the blood puppets, and asked, Li Bu'er, where did you get these pills? I bought them from the treasure pavilion, Qin Feiyang said. When he gave the Beast Emperor the pills, he had already thought of the answer. You bought them from the treasure pavilion? Yi Zhong and the Beast Emperor looked at each other. Before the Nether King's hell opened, the treasure pavilion did sell a large number of pills with 4 dragon-shaped pill auras. That can't be right. You gave the Beast Emperor thousands of divine life pills at once, which means that you have a lot of pills with 4 dragon-shaped pill auras. However, this old man remembers that when the treasure pavilion sold these medicinal pellets, they would auction them off one by one in the auction house. Do you have so much energy or money to buy so many pills? Yi Zhong frowned. This, Qin Feiyang didn't know how to answer for a moment, because he thought that he could brush it off. But he didn't expect Yi Zhong to get to the bottom of it. Yi Zhong said, Are you hiding something from me? Fine. I admit that I refined these pills with my own hands. Qin Feiyang said helplessly. What? You refined them? Yi Zhong immediately stopped and turned to stare at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Yi Zhong stopped because he was shocked. But the blood puppets that were fighting with Yi Zhong wouldn't stop. Because they had no consciousness and no emotions, they wouldn't be shocked at all. Dozens of blood puppets swarmed forward. Yi Zhong immediately screamed in pain, and several deep wounds appeared all over his body, so deep that his bones could be seen. Get lost! Yi Zhong was furious. He raised his fists and punched wildly. Subduing dragon-killing formation. At the same time, Yongli also roared towards the sky. One green python after another roared out. There were a total of 99 of them. Every single one of them exuded astonishing ferocity. The 99 giant pythons also formed a terrifying killing array and attacked the blood demon puppet. Rumble! The 2 great killing arrays were indestructible. One by one the blood demon puppet shattered, subduing dragon-killing formation. Qin Feiyang murmured. It turned out that this Yongli also had such a powerful technique. When he had fought with Yongli back then, Yongli hadn't used this subduing dragon-killing formation. Its power was no less than that of the heaven-destroying sword formation. It seemed that the 8 divine emperors of the dragon-slaying palace were indeed extraordinary people. Heaven-destroying sword formation, subduing dragon-killing formation. Beast Emperor and Yi Zhong were dumbstruck. Wasn't this the divine art of the 2 divine emperors, Wang Ming and Yang Li? They were Wang Ming and Yang Li? But that wasn't right. These 2 people didn't look like Wang Ming and Yang Li at all. Besides, even if they really were Wang Ming and Yang Li, why were they with Qin Feiyang? Could it be? A terrifying thought suddenly came to Beast Emperor's mind. Had the 2 of them already been subdued by Qin Feiyang? Wang Ming and Yang Li's all-out attack relieved a lot of the pressure on everyone. However, more and more blood demon puppets were still pouring out of the crack. So this was only temporary. Only by escaping this cage could they solve the root of all their problems. Wang Ming and Yang Li didn't hide their true appearances anymore. It really is them. Beast Emperor and Yi Zhong couldn't believe it. Wang Ming looked at the 2 of them and said, We are well aware of your strength. Stop hiding it and attack with all your might. Let's attack together and blast open the light screen. If there's a problem, let's talk about it after we escape. Yang Li said. Who? Beast Emperor and Yi Zhong took deep breaths. Although they were full of questions, now clearly wasn't the time to ask them. Still hiding your strength? Qin Feiyang looked at Yi Zhong and Yang Li in astonishment. We're also hiding our strength. What's so strange about that? Madman thought to himself. Let's begin. Wang Ming stared at the light screen above and said in a deep voice, "Rumble." The heaven-destroying sword formation and the subduing dragon-killing formation appeared once again. Wrath of the Fire God. Yi Zhong also shouted in a low voice. Flames surged out and turned into thunderbolts that surged high up in the sky. Roar! An earth-shattering destructive power burst forth. Wrath of the Fire God. Qin Feiyang looked at the thunderbolts and the divine thunder formed by the flames. This was somewhat similar to the Fire Thunder Divine Spell, but its power surpassed that of the Fire Thunder Divine Spell. Divine spells of the same level differed in strength, because as one continued to comprehend and understand a divine spell, in other words, it was the so-called tempering. This way, its power would gradually increase. For example, if the supreme level was divided into 3, 6, and 9 levels, then the Fire Thunder Divine Spell could only be considered a 3rd level at most, because the Fire Thunder Divine Spell had only been upgraded to the supreme level before Qin Feiyang entered the Hell of the Nether King. This was just like humans. If a person who had just become a god didn't have a powerful divine spell or divine weapon, they would never be able to compare with someone who had been a god for a long time. Wang Ming and Yang Li's heaven-destroying sword formation and the subduing dragon-killing formation were considered 6th level. After all, both of them were older than Qin Feiyang. The divine spells they had mastered, especially this kind of trump card, had long been tempered thousands of times. As for Yi Zhong's Wrath of the Fire God, that could definitely be considered a 9th level, which was also the peak level of the supreme level divine spell. After all, Yi Zhong was an old antique who had lived for who knows how many years. The Wrath of the Fire God was his strongest move. He must have comprehended it to an unprecedented level. So, the Fire Thunder Divine Spell was naturally not on the same level as it. Qilin Book. Just as Qin Feiyang was pondering, the Beast Emperor's shout rang out. Qin Feiyang hurriedly looked over and saw a wave of fire rushing out from the Beast Emperor's body. Between the waves of fire, there was a book floating. The size of this book was twice as big as half of the book. It was completely red as if it was made of magma. Divine light flickered, and its aura was shocking. As the Beast Emperor pointed out, the cover of the book automatically flipped open, and the first page appeared. On it there was a picture of a Qilin, but it was not a fire Qilin. It was a black Qilin. Its entire body was as black as ink, and it was lifelike. "Rise!" The Beast Emperor roared again. Words were law. The black Qilin on the page immediately roared and soared into the sky, turning into a Qilin behemoth that was hundreds of feet tall. Following closely, the second page flipped open again. This was a blood Qilin. "Rise!" As the Beast Emperor shouted, the blood Qilin also rushed out of the page. Its body was hundreds of feet tall, like a real blood Qilin. Fierce beasts rolled in all directions. The 3rd page, the 4th page, the 5th page. The pages opened one after another. Water Qilin, Snow Qilin, Earth Qilin, Wood Qilin, Wind Qilin, Thunder Qilin. A Qilin behemoth kept attacking. On the last page, there was a picture of a fire Qilin. Roar! Accompanied by a loud roar, the fire Qilin also roared out of the page. In the end, a total of 9 Qilin behemoths floated above the Beast Emperor's head, their ferocious might shocking the world. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Looking at this aura, this Qilin book was also a 9th-class supreme god art. Indeed, none of these giants could be underestimated. In the blink of an eye. "Kill!" Yi Zhong shouted angrily. Sky Destroyer Sword Array, Dragon Subduing Killing Array, Wrath of the Fire God, Qilin Book. The 4 supreme killing techniques carried with them an apocalyptic aura, crushing groups of blood puppets one after another as they went straight for the light screen. Shatter! The Beast Emperor, Wang Ming, and Yang Li couldn't help roaring. Qin Feiyang and Frenzy's eyes were also filled with anticipation. 2 6th-class supreme god arts, 2 9th-class supreme god arts. They could definitely blast open the light screen. Rumble! The 4 most powerful god arts. If they were outside, it would definitely be a scene of apocalypse. When the 4 great divine arts slammed into the light screen began to distort. It will definitely work. The 6 of them stared at the light screen, their hands unconsciously clenched together. However, As time passed, the light screen that had been distorting showed no signs of breaking. A sense of helplessness gradually welled up in their hearts. Were the four most powerful god arts unable to break the light screen? In the end, the distorted light screen gradually calmed down. Apart from the crack through which the blood puppets kept pouring in, there were no other cracks. How strong is this mysterious blood shadow? The six of them stared blankly at the light screen. It was so strong that it made them despair. Wang Ming suddenly roared, "Young lord, hurry up and show us your strength." And he didn't send a telepathic message. Hearing Wang Ming's roar, Yang Li and the Beast Emperor looked at Qin Feiyang in unison, their eyes full of pleading. Because only Qin Feiyang had the ability to break the light screen. "Young lord." At the same time, Yi Zhong was startled and turned to look at Wang Ming. Seeing Wang Ming stare at Qin Feiyang, he shifted his gaze to Qin Feiyang. "Young lord, wasn't this how Dragon Slayer Palace addressed the four young lords? Why did Wang Ming call Li Buer young lord?" Seeing Yi Zhong look at him, Qin Feiyang's heart turned cold. What was wrong with Wang Ming? Calling him young lord was tantamount to exposing his identity, wasn't it? But it was too late to do anything about it now. Yi Zhong had already locked his gaze on him. As for Wang Ming, he couldn't blame him. Because after fighting for so many days in a row, no matter who it was, their mentality would explode. Once their mentality exploded, they couldn't care less. Chapter 2688. The atmosphere here was also a little different. Wang Ming also realized that he had let the cat out of the bag, and he couldn't help glancing at Yi Zhong uneasily. Would Yi Zhong notice? Would the young lord blame him? Crack! But suddenly, there was the sound of something shattering. Startled, the six of them hurriedly looked up. They had thought that the light curtain had shattered, but when they looked, their expressions changed abruptly. It wasn't the light curtain that had shattered. It was Madman's blood demon realm. Why had they been able to hold on until now? It was because of Madman's blood demon realm. The blood devil domain could suppress the cultivation of the blood puppets. This played a very crucial role for them. They had been able to kill the blood puppets so easily because of the suppression of the blood demon realm. And once the blood demon realm shattered, the blood puppets would be able to unleash their peak strength, especially the blood demon puppets. Without the suppression of the blood demon realm, it would be a disaster for them. I've already tried my best. Madman shook his head. He couldn't stop the blood demon realm from shattering, because the divine power in his body was about to run out. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and smiled. Then I'll do it. In any case, Wang Ming had already exposed his identity. Although Yi Zhong hadn't asked yet, he was definitely already suspicious. When the time came, Yi Zhong would definitely ask. And he couldn't find an excuse to dodge this question at all. Because Yi Zhong was a very smart old man to begin with. Not to mention such an obvious exposure. Even the slightest clue couldn't be hidden from him. Then hurry up. The divine power barrier that isolates the evil power can't hold on for much longer. Madman said. Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at Yi Zhong and the other three. He shouted, "Activate your strongest divine arts right now." Okay. Wang Ming, Yang Li and Beast Emperor were overjoyed. Heaven Vanquishing Sword Array, Hidden Dragon Killing Array, Qilin Book. The three most powerful deity arts instantly appeared out of nowhere. But Yi Zhong didn't move. He looked at Qin Feiyang, his old eyes shining brightly, as if he wanted to see through Qin Feiyang. "After we escape, I'll tell you everything you want to know." Qin Feiyang looked at Yi Zhong and said. Yi Zhong let out a long breath. With a wave of his hand, the deity formula, Fury of the Fire God, appeared. 3,000 clones open. Qin Feiyang let out a low roar, and 3,000 incarnations instantly appeared behind him. It's this kind of divine art. Wang Ming and Yang Li were wild with joy. Once the 3,000 clones were unleashed, they would definitely be able to shatter the light barrier. Everyone, whether or not we can escape depends on now. Give me 100% of your strength. Activate your fighting spirit. Qin Feiyang shouted. Ding! Madman stopped Qin Feiyang and stared at the blood mist in front of him in bewilderment. Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. The power that summoned me has appeared again, and it's not far ahead. Madman said. Not far. Stunned, Qin Feiyang looked up, but the blood mist was too thick, and he couldn't see clearly. Let's go. Madman took the lead and ran forward. Qin Feiyang also dispersed his 3,000 clones and hurriedly followed. Wang Ming and Yang Li naturally chased after the two of them. Beast Emperor and Yi Zhong looked at each other and finally followed. Dozens of breaths later, a blurry silhouette entered the vision of the six of them. The silhouette was huge, and was faintly discernible in the blood mist, looking like a primordial ferocious beast. Young lord, be careful, Wang Ming said warily. After the light curtain shattered, the mysterious blood shadow's voice never sounded again, as if it had disappeared into thin air. However, they knew that the mysterious blood shadow was definitely still hiding in the dark. Therefore, who knew if there was any danger? But it was unexpected. After that, the six of them went smoothly, and the mysterious blood shadow didn't appear again. Finally, they saw the true appearance of the silhouette. It was a tall blood pagoda. The blood pagoda was 10,000 feet tall, and had 9 floors. The entire ancient pagoda was blood red, as if it was made of flesh and blood, emitting a torrential malevolent aura. There was a door on the first floor of the blood pagoda, but at that moment the door was tightly shut. It stood alone in the bloody mist. There were no blood puppets around it, and it was deathly silent. It gave people a bone-chilling feeling. That's it. Madman's gaze flickered. It was this blood pagoda that had been summoning him. Let's go and take a look. But be careful. Even if it's summoning you, it might not be a good thing, Qin Feiyang said solemnly. Madman nodded. The six of them cautiously approached the blood pagoda. 10 breaths later, they stopped in front of the blood pagoda and looked around. Only after confirming that there were no blood puppets around, did they look at the blood pagoda. There were patterns carved on the blood pagoda. These patterns were actually of the blood demon race. Some of the blood demons were what they looked like after transforming, while others were what they looked like before transforming. There were also particularly tall blood demons, and particularly short blood demons. Almost the entire blood pagoda was covered in blood demon statues. Wang Ming suddenly pointed at the stone door on the first floor and shouted, "Look at the patterns on that door!" Qin Feiyang and the others looked over and were stunned. There were 2 different patterns on the stone door. The left half of the stone door had a pattern like the sun. The right half of the stone door had a pattern like a waning moon. Yang Li frowned. This looks like an evil sun and an evil moon. That's right. It's an evil sun and an evil moon. Qin Feiyang nodded. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang looked up at the top floor of the blood pagoda with a blank expression. There were 9 floors in the blood pagoda. There were many blood demon statues carved on the bottom 8 floors. But there was only one blood demon statue on the top floor. The blood demon was a middle-aged man. He wore blood-red armor, and held a blood-red halberd in his hand. From below, that blood demon looked like an overlord of heaven and earth. The sky piercer in his hand pointed to the sky, and his eyes looked askance at the heavens, exuding the domineering aura of a king. There seemed to be a faint trace of unyieldingness. Madman looked at Qin Feiyang, and also looked up. When he saw the statue, his gaze was instantly glued to it, and he couldn't look away. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang noticed Madman's abnormality and asked suspiciously. So familiar, Madman mumbled. Familiar? Qin Feiyang was blank. Yes, I think I've seen it somewhere before. Madman nodded. Impossible. Qin Feiyang frowned. This was Madman's first time in hell, and the first time he saw the blood pagoda. How could he have seen it before? Whoosh! Suddenly, Beast Emperor took a step forward and landed in front of the stone door. What are you doing? Don't be rash! Alarmed Qin Feiyang hurriedly shouted. But Beast Emperor turned a deaf ear and murmured, "There must be a supreme treasure in this blood pagoda." As he spoke, he raised his arm and slammed his palm against the tightly shut stone door. Boom! Not only did the stone door fail to open, but the Beast Emperor was also forced to retreat. Poof! When he steadied himself, he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was deathly pale. What's going on? Qin Feiyang and the others looked at Beast Emperor in bewilderment. This stone door can reflect my power back to me, Beast Emperor murmured and stared at the stone door in disbelief. Reflect it? Everyone was stunned. Wang Ming and Yang Li immediately stepped forward to give it a try. The result was the same as Beast Emperor. Moreover, the more strength they used, the greater the rebound force of the stone door. It seems that even if we're here, we can't go in. Beast Emperor was indignant. It wasn't easy to get here, but they were blocked outside the door? I'll give it a try. Suddenly, a lazy voice came from behind them. Young man. Startled, Qin Feiyang and the others hurriedly turned their heads and saw the young man walking out of the blood mist. The snow python was still lying on the young man's shoulder as usual. It seemed to be affected by the young man and looked sleepy and weak. After saying that, the mad scientist raised his arm and slammed it at the stone door. Accompanied by a loud bang, a scene suddenly appeared in the mad scientist's mind. A 30,000-meter tall giant and a 30,000-meter tall divine dragon were engaged in a wild battle. The entire sky was filled with a destructive aura. The mad scientist's eyes trembled. This was exactly the same as the scene that appeared in his mind when he entered the moon of evil and touched the blood bead. Who are you? The mad scientist looked at the giant and dragon's faces. But the giant and dragon seemed to be wearing a layer of veil. No matter how hard the mad scientist tried, he couldn't see their true faces. At the same time, Qin Feiyang and the group all looked at the mad scientist in shock. Although they didn't see the scene that appeared in the mad scientist's mind, they saw with their own eyes that the mad scientist wasn't sent flying by the stone door. His fist was still on the stone door. Can he really do it? Everyone's heart was suddenly filled with expectations. However, the next moment, the mad scientist suddenly retracted his fist, hugged his head, squatted on the ground and screamed. It seemed like he was in extreme pain. What's the situation? This sudden scene made Qin Feiyang and the others fall into a state of shock. When they recovered, Qin Feiyang immediately ran up. When he saw the mad scientist's distorted face, his eyes suddenly trembled. Who here knew the mad scientist better than him? Whether it was his temperament or willpower, they were both beyond ordinary people. If he hadn't encountered something particularly painful, he wouldn't have shown such a miserable side. And Qin Feiyang also saw that the mad scientist's forehead was dripping with bean-sized beads of sweat. What on earth had the mad scientist experienced just now? Are you okay? Qin Feiyang squatted in front of the mad scientist, reached out and patted his shoulder, his face full of worry. However, with Qin Feiyang's pat, the mad scientist seemed to be greatly frightened and slapped at Qin Feiyang's chest. Caught off guard, Qin Feiyang was immediately sent flying, blood gushing out of his mouth. Young lord. Wang Ming and Qin Feiyang's expressions changed, and they hurriedly ran over. On the side, Yi Zhong instinctively took a step forward when Qin Feiyang landed. There was a trace of concern on his face. But then, that concern was replaced by indifference. He also retracted his steps. Are you okay? Wang Ming and Qin Feiyang helped Qin Feiyang up. I'm fine. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and looked at the mad scientist. The mad scientist seemed to have calmed down a lot and slowly raised his head to look at them. When he saw the blood at the corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth, he was stunned for a moment. Don't you remember? Wang Ming and Qin Feiyang looked at the mad scientist in astonishment. My mind was in a mess just now, and I suddenly felt someone close to me. Speaking of which, the mad scientist's expression froze as he looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, You weren't beaten up by me, were you? It was you. Wang Ming and Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. The mad scientist was stunned. He looked at Qin Feiyang and laughed dryly. Sorry, I'll be gentler next time. Next time? The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. He walked up to the mad scientist and frowned. What the hell happened to you just now? The mad scientist stood up and looked at the stone door, saying telepathically, I saw the same scene I saw last time. Scene. Qin Feiyang was stunned. The scene of a 10,000 zhang tall giant and a 10,000 zhang tall divine dragon fighting. And just like last time, when I saw these scenes, there was a sharp pain in my head. It was as if my soul was being torn apart, the mad scientist said. Although he didn't know what was going on, he had a feeling that this matter wasn't simple, and he couldn't let Yi Zhong and the others know. So he had been transmitting his voice. I see. Then this time, did you see their faces clearly? Qin Feiyang asked secretly. I wanted to see their faces clearly, but there seemed to be an invisible force in front of my eyes, so I couldn't see them clearly. The mad scientist shook his head. I couldn't see them clearly. Qin Feiyang frowned. Why couldn't he, Yi Zhong Beast Emperor, the young man and Wang Ming see these scenes, but the mad scientist could? What was the connection between the mad scientist and this hell? What are you mumbling about? Looking at Qin Feiyang and the young man who were exchanging glances in front of the stone door, Beast Emperor couldn't help but frown. Nothing. The two of them shook their heads. There must be something wrong, Beast Emperor muttered. He looked at the mad scientist and said, since the stone door didn't reflect your power, you should be able to open it, right? Hurry up and open the stone door. Let us see what's inside. The young man also spoke with a hint of curiosity in his eyes. The mad scientist looked at everyone, then at the stone door again with a hint of wariness in his eyes. He was really afraid to see those scenes again and feel the sharp pain of his soul being torn apart. We have to figure everything out. Qin Feiyang transmitted telepathically and gave the mad scientist an encouraging look. Chapter 2690. Madman lowered his head and pondered for a while, then suddenly looked at the stone door and nodded. Okay. Decisively, he raised his arm again and slammed his palm against the stone door. The moment it touched the stone door, the scene appeared again. The soul-tearing pain also emerged. He gritted his teeth and pushed the stone door hard. Boom! Suddenly, a crack appeared in the middle of the stone door. The Beast Emperor and the others looked at each other. Madman could actually push it open? Why was that? One had to know. Madman was only at the 9th heaven realm. And here, except for Qin Feiyang, everyone's cultivation was higher than him. But no one could, except for Madman? Could it be that this blood tower really had something to do with Madman? Open for me, Madman roared, baring his teeth. The excruciating pain that felt like his soul was being torn apart almost made him faint. However, the scene in his mind was still the same as before. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see the faces of the giant and the giant dragon. The feeling of seeing flowers in the fog made him very uncomfortable. The crack of the door was getting bigger and bigger. Boom! Suddenly, a bloody aura suddenly gushed out from the crack of the door. Qin Feiyang and Madman were immediately drowned by that aura. No one knew how Madman felt. But in Qin Feiyang's heart, a fear that couldn't be dispelled emerged. It was like seeing a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, seeing the birth of a demon king. Immediately after, that aura drowned the young man, Yi Zhong and the others. Just like Qin Feiyang, a sense of fear rose uncontrollably in his heart, as if he was trapped in purgatory. Open! Madman roared again, raising his other hand and slamming it against the stone door with all his strength. Boom! The stone door was finally completely opened. But there was nothing inside the stone door, only a thick blood mist. This blood mist was the evil power. And just like the evil power in Fallen Valley, even the blood demon race couldn't absorb it. And as the stone door was completely opened, the bloody aura became even more terrifying. Boom! All of a sudden, a blood-red giant hand descended from the sky, slapping towards Qin Feiyang and the others. Immediately, everyone felt a sense of deadly crisis. That giant hand was several hundred feet long and covered in furry blood-red hair. Qin Feiyang was shocked. Why did it look like the blood demon race's giant hand? The giant hand was like a mountain, blotting out the sky and covering the sun as it slapped towards Qin Feiyang and the others. Block it! Wang Ming shouted. The heaven-destroying sword array appeared and attacked the giant hand. Yang Li immediately summoned the dragon subduing killing formation. 99 giant pythons charged toward the giant hand with monstrous killing intent. Rumble. After an earth-shattering rumble, the array of the Sword of Doom and the array of the Crouching Dragon were smashed into pieces by the giant hand. Puff! Wang Ming and Yang Li spat out mouthfuls of blood as they stumbled back. They stared at the giant hand in disbelief. How could he be so strong? The Beast Emperor and Yi Zhong were also slightly dazed. This was a little too ridiculously powerful. However, the giant hand did not stop at all and continued to slap towards the group. The Beast Emperor and Yi Zhong hurriedly attacked as well. They summoned their strongest divine arts and attacked the giant hand. Boom! However, that giant hand was like the hand of a peerless demon king. It was indestructible and unstoppable. Yi Zhong and Yang Li's divine arts were also destroyed instantly. They spat out mouthfuls of blood and stumbled back. No way! Qin Feiyang was shocked. Yi Zhong and Yang Li's divine arts were stronger than Wang Ming and Yang Li's, but they could not block the giant hand? Old man Yi, power of laws! The Beast Emperor shouted. The Dharma of fire emerged and turned into a sea of fire. It surged forward and engulfed the giant hand instantly. It works. Everyone was stunned. However, before they could rejoice, the giant hand actually shattered the Dharma of fire, and the entire sea of fire was destroyed instantly. Puff! Yi Zhong and Yang Li spat out mouthfuls of blood again. Interesting, the young man murmured. Suddenly, he leaped and punched the giant hand. Boom! A terrifying force roared out of the young man's fist like a torrent. He can definitely do it, Wang Ming whispered. However, before he could finish speaking, the young man was directly slapped down by the giant hand and smashed hard onto the ground. No way! Even he can't block it. Qin Feiyang and the others were dumbfounded. The young man's strength spoke for itself. He could even crush the ancestral dragons when they joined forces. But he was actually no match for the giant hand at this moment? How terrifying was this giant hand? Young Lord. Wang Ming and Yang Li looked at Qin Feiyang again. Understood. Qin Feiyang nodded and turned to look at Madman. However, his expression immediately stiffened. Where was Madman? Madman, who had been standing next to him all this time, had disappeared at some point. That's right. Where's Madman? Wang Ming and the others also noticed that the madman had disappeared, and they were all stupefied. When did he disappear? Why didn't anyone notice? Swish! Immediately after, everyone looked at the stone door in unison. Had Madman entered the Blood Pagoda without a word? That should be the case. Otherwise, there was no way a person could vanish into thin air. Qin Feiyang came back to his senses and said in a deep voice, "Don't bother about him first. Hurry up and activate your divine arts." Boom! Wang Ming and Yang Li activated the Heaven Vanquishing Sword formation and Dragon Crouching formation once more. Beast Emperor and Yi Zhong also activated the Qilin Book and Fury of the Fire God. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and landed in front of the four of them. 3,000 clones appeared. With the activation of the Battle Soul and Eye of Heaven, countless divine arts appeared. Kill! Qin Feiyang let out a low roar, and his divine art majestically blasted towards the giant hand. The void shattered and the ground collapsed. However, this killer move that had always been successful was like a withered tree in front of the giant hand, and could not withstand a single blow. The giant hand landed. The supplementary Heaven Vanquishing Sword formation, Dragon Crouching formation, Qilin Book, and Fury of the Fire God shattered, and were annihilated continuously. How is this possible? Everyone's gazes trembled at this scene. One had to know. With Qin Feiyang's 3,000 clones and Eye of Heaven, no one under the imperishable stage could compete with him. Could it be this giant hand had the strength of the imperishable stage? But how was this possible? The Hell of the King of Hell had a rule that it could not exceed the perfection 9th heaven stage. What was going on? Boom! The giant hand was like an invincible god of war, crazily crushing the divine arts that filled the sky. Poof! Blood gushed out of Qin Feiyang's mouth and his face was pale. Why can't I win? And his face was full of disbelief. Could it be that this giant hand really had the strength of the imperishable stage? For a moment, Qin Feiyang and the others were in a desperate situation. and their lives were in danger. However, they did not know that frenzy did not enter the blood tower. And at this moment, Madman was just like before. He stood beside Qin Feiyang and didn't move at all. Not only that, under frenzy's gaze, Qin Feiyang and the others also stood in place without moving and did not see the so-called giant hand. Qin Feiyang, the stone door has been opened, let's go in and take a look. Frenzy opened his mouth, and the pain in his head had disappeared. But Qin Feiyang next to him did not respond to him. Frenzy was taken aback and turned to look at Qin Feiyang frowning. What are you doing? I am talking to you. But Qin Feiyang still ignored him, as if he did not hear him. What's going on? Frenzy finally realized that something was wrong. He looked at Yi Zhong, the young man and the others, and found that they were all standing in place without making a sound, as if they had lost their souls. Frenzy was puzzled and patted Qin Feiyang's shoulder, shouting, Did you hear that? Did you hear that? What's wrong with you? But even so, Qin Feiyang still ignored him. What's going on? Frenzy was completely dumbfounded. Wait a minute. Frenzy looked at the blood tower with surprise. Could it be that the abnormality of Qin Feiyang and the others was related to the opening of the blood tower? They have already fallen into an illusion. You even dare to take over the lunatic's body. You really don't know life from death. Qin Feiyang roared. His divine sense immediately turned into a torrent that pounced at the blood shadow. At the same time, the lunatic's divine sense also emerged and blasted towards the blood shadow. The two of them attacked from the inside and outside. Two mere ants in the 9th heaven stage want to fight me? The blood shadow laughed sinisterly and turned into two blood mists that pounced towards Qin Feiyang and the lunatic's divine sense. Puff! Outside, Qin Feiyang and the lunatic immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Their divine sense was actually completely swallowed by the blood shadow in an instant. Hee. Although forcefully taking over my body and the fusion won't be perfect, it doesn't matter now. The blood shadow smiled sinisterly and pounced towards the lunatic's divine sense again. The lunatic was in despair. Qin Feiyang was also burning with anxiety. Wait, don't I have the soul-anchoring divine pearl? The soul-anchoring divine pearl should be able to protect the lunatic's divine sense. Qin Feiyang suddenly had an idea. He took out the soul-anchoring divine pearl and erased the blood contract inside. He handed it to the lunatic and shouted, Quickly recognize it as your master. The lunatic naturally wouldn't be unreasonable. After all, their relationship was right there. He grabbed the soul-anchoring divine pearl. After his blood merged with the soul-anchoring divine pearl, the soul-anchoring divine pearl immediately drilled into the lunatic's divine sense and merged with his divine sense. Wang. Immediately, divine light appeared and blocked the blood shadow outside, protecting the lunatic's divine sense. What is this? The blood shadow was shocked. Haha. As expected of the soul-anchoring divine pearl. Let's see how you're going to take over my body now. The lunatic laughed and the pain also dissipated. Damn it! The blood shadow roared. He didn't expect that these people would have such a divine item in their hands. A divine item like the soul-anchoring divine pearl, that protected the divine soul, could be said to be comparable to a heaven-defying divine item. Moreover, it was extremely rare in the world. Since I can't take over your body, I'll settle for the next best thing. I'll take over Qin Feiyang's body. The blood shadow sneered and shot out of the lunatic's divine sense. It instantly entered Qin Feiyang's head again. Qin Feiyang. The lunatic's expression changed immediately. Although you can't absorb the evil power, your talent and abilities aren't bad. With your body, I can still return to the peak of this world. The blood shadow smiled viciously and lunged toward Qin Feiyang's divine sense. Qin Feiyang immediately felt a sense of fatal danger. Upon seeing this, the lunatic did not hesitate to retrieve the soul-anchoring divine pearl and return it to Qin Feiyang. Clang! However, at the same time. Chapter 2692. Wait a minute. Suddenly, a loud and clear voice could be heard. Everyone was stunned and looked at Qin Feiyang. This was because the voice came from Qin Feiyang's body. Senior King Yu? Qin Feiyang was also stunned. The owner of the voice was King Yu. Brother Qin, let me out. King Yu seemed to be in a hurry. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. Although he didn't know what was going on, he couldn't reject King Yu's request. As for the evil force, there was no need to worry about lunatic. Qin Feiyang made a mental move, and the ancient city of King Yu flew out of his vital energy reserve. This is the ancient city of King Yu. The Beast Emperor and Yi Zhong's pupils constricted. The relationship between Qin Feiyang and King Yu was already this good? He even dared to leave the ancient city of King Yu to Qin Feiyang? This is the ancient city of King Yu. At the same time, the Crimson Shadow exclaimed. Qin Feiyang looked at the Crimson Shadow in a daze. It wasn't surprising that Yi Zhong and the Beast Emperor knew the ancient city of King Yu. After all, they had fought with King Yu more than once. However, this Crimson Shadow actually knew the ancient city of King Yu too. Brother Qin, hurry. King Yu's urging voice rang out once more. Okay. Qin Feiyang came back to his senses. With a thought, King Yu's huge body appeared beside Qin Feiyang. King Yu, Yi Zhong and the Beast Emperor's pupils constricted, and they were on their guard. At the same time, the Crimson Shadow also became silent. Senior King Yu, Qin Feiyang was about to ask, but when he saw King Yu's expression, his eyes lit up. King Yu stared at the Crimson Shadow. There were bewilderment, joy, and nervousness in his eyes. In short, it was very complicated. Senior King Yu, what's going on? Qin Feiyang turned to look at Lunatic and asked through voice transmission. Lunatic shook his head and looked suspicious. For a moment, no one spoke here, and the place fell into a deathly silence. The young man also retracted his arm and looked curiously at the Ghost King and Blood Shadow. A long time passed. King Yu suddenly lost control of his emotions and exclaimed, Lord Father, is that you? What? Father? Qin Feiyang and the others were shocked. This Blood Shadow was King Yu's father? When Blood Shadow heard this, his body seemed to tremble as he mumbled, Child, is that you? It's really you. Father. The Ghost King instantly cried tears of joy as he threw a punch at the barrier trapping Blood Shadow. Boom. However, the barrier did not shatter. Instead, it was the Ghost King who was pushed back by the barrier. Whoosh. The Ghost King abruptly turned around and glared at the young man, his eyes flashing coldly. Senior Ghost King, don't be rash. Qin Feiyang saw that the situation was not good, and hurriedly stood between King Yu and the young man. What a joke. The young man's strength was so frightening. If the Ghost King were to make a move to infuriate him, even the Ghost King would suffer a great loss. Who? The Ghost King took a deep breath and cupped his fists at the young man. Human, please let my Lord Father off. The young man was silent. The Ghost King could not help but frown. He was so polite completely on account of Qin Feiyang. If not for Qin Feiyang, he would have already made a move. As for the young man's strength, he did not know much about it, but he was not afraid. Well, Qin Feiyang glanced at the young man and coughed dryly. He looked at the Ghost King and said, Senior Ghost King, I think we should clarify this matter first. What if he is not your father? No, he is, the Ghost King said. The Ghost King said, You haven't even seen his face. How do you know that he is? We'll talk about it later. Looking at him, I feel that he is more like a human, Qin Feiyang said. This was because this Blood Shadow, be it in terms of height or body shape, was very similar to a human. If he was really the Ghost King's father, his body would not be so small. No, he is my father. The Ghost King shook his head and looked at the Blood Shadow. Lord Father, show your true appearance and let them see. The Blood Shadow was silent for a long time. With a sigh, his entire body began to condense. A nose, eyes, and mouth gradually appeared. In a short while, an old man in blood-red clothes appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The old man was only about 1.8 meters tall and had long blood-red hair. Even the beard on his chin was blood-red. His eyes were even more bloodshot. It's father. The Ghost King clenched his fists tightly and looked at Qin Feiyang. Do you see that? He is my father. Qin Feiyang sized up the old man. This was not a blood demon. He was simply a human. This is not father's physical body. It is father's divine soul. The Ghost King said. Divine soul. Qin Feiyang and the rest looked at each other. It turned out that it was a divine soul. If it was a divine soul, that would explain it. Because the blood demons were large in size, their divine souls were naturally extraordinary. However, such a large divine soul was really rare. Just like dragons. The divine souls of dragons were only a meter long. The divine souls of humans were even smaller. Although the divine souls of humans could transform into their own appearance, which was the same height as them, the true size of the divine soul was only the size of a baby's palm. In other words, it was a pocket-sized person. The Beast Emperor looked at the blood-red clothed old man and frowned at the Ghost King. Is he really your father? The Ghost King nodded. That's not right. Do you remember that when we fought once, you personally said that your father had already fallen? The Beast Emperor raised his eyebrows. This old man also remembers you saying that. Yi Zhong nodded. Yes. In this king's memories, father has indeed fallen. Weren't they unrelated? Why was he Qin Feiyang's junior now? Besides, the young man's strength was so strong. So in terms of seniority, Qin Feiyang should be the young man's junior. What was the relationship between these two? Looking at everyone's reaction, the young man didn't explain further. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Since you've personally spoken, I'll spare him this time. The young man waved his hand, and the barrier that trapped the blood-red clothed old man immediately dissipated. The corners of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. Why was it getting more and more ridiculous? Qin Feiyang only took it as a joke. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, Thank you. Thank you. The Ghost King also smiled gratefully at the young man. However, the blood-red clothed old man wasn't grateful at all. His eyes were filled with disgust. But it wasn't just the young man alone that he hated, but also Qin Feiyang, Yi Zhong and the others. It seemed that he really hated humans and dragons to the bone. The Ghost King sighed. Father, believe me, Qin Feiyang is really different from the lunatic. Different? The blood-red clothed old man sneered and looked at Qin Feiyang and the lunatic. Do you dare enter the blood tower with me? Enter the blood tower? Qin Feiyang and the lunatic immediately looked at the stone door. Wasn't entering the blood tower what they wanted? But now they really were a little hesitant. Seeing their concerns, the Ghost King said with a smile, Don't worry, I'm here. All right. Qin Feiyang and the lunatic nodded. Although the blood-red clothed old man couldn't be trusted, the Ghost King was absolutely trustworthy. Then come with me. With that, the blood-red clothed old man waved his hand and disappeared into the blood tower with the Ghost King. Qin Feiyang and the lunatic looked at each other, then resolutely stepped into the blood tower. Yang Li, let's follow them. Wang Ming shouted. Yang Li nodded. The two of them immediately rushed toward the stone door. Yi Zhong, the Beast Emperor, and the young man also walked toward the stone door with a trace of curiosity. But before they could reach the stone door slammed shut with a bang. The five of them stood outside the stone door in a daze. The next moment, Beast Emperor was furious and shouted, What is the meaning of this? Why did you let Qin Feiyang and the lunatic in, but not us? Wang Ming and the others were also very unhappy, but the stone door didn't open again, and the blood-red clothed old man ignored them. He is the ancestor of our blood demon clan. He is a very impressive figure. The blood demon tower was left behind by our ancestor. The blood-red clothed old man said. Ancestor. Qin Feiyang mumbled. Do you know? Although this old man is not dead, whenever I think of my dead clansmen, this old man feels more pain than death. This blood feud is as deep as the sea. This old man is unwilling, so this old man must take revenge. And you are the key. The blood-red clothed old man suddenly turned his head and stared at Madman. I am the key. Madman was stunned. What did he mean? Qin Feiyang and King Yu also looked at the blood-red clothed old man suspiciously. This was Madman's first time entering the Nether King's hell. How could he be the key to taking revenge? Father, are you mistaken? King Yu asked. He always thought that Qin Feiyang was the hope of the blood demon clan. But why did he become Madman in his father's eyes? This old man must possess your body. As long as I succeed, this old man will be able to leave Fallen Valley and find the dragon god to take revenge. So, when the blood-red clothed old man said this, his eyes couldn't help but reveal a sinister smile. His entire body turned into a bloody mist and rushed toward Madman's head again. "Father," King Yu exclaimed. Qin Feiyang and Madman's expression changed. "No one can stop this old man." The blood-red clothed old man laughed sinisterly. He attacked Madman's sea of consciousness and crazily hit the soul-calming divine pearl. With every hit, Madman's divine soul would feel a sharp pain. "Senior King Yu." Qin Feiyang looked at King Yu anxiously. King Yu's eyes flickered. Suddenly, he gritted his teeth and roared. "Father, if you dare to possess him, I'll self-destruct in front of you." This represented his determination. "Fool, do you know how important he is to our blood demon clan? You want to self-destruct? Then self-destruct. I'll take it that I don't have a son like you." The blood-red clothed old man snorted coldly. His tone was ruthless and cold. "Old fart, don't go too far." Madman roared. "If you don't stop, then don't blame me for being impolite." Qin Feiyang's expression was also grim. "This has nothing to do with you. You entered the Nether King's hell to seek wealth. As long as you don't interfere, this old man will give you a few heaven-defying divine artifacts." The blood-red clothed old man shouted. "Heaven-defying divine artifacts?" Qin Feiyang muttered and shook his head. "If it were anyone else, they might be tempted, but it's useless against me." 9-leaf fire lotus. At that moment, Qin Feiyang activated his battle soul. But soon after, his expression froze as he exclaimed, "What's going on?" Because the 9-leaf fire lotus did not appear. "Haha, you don't know, do you? This Blood Demon Tower has a terrifying ability. As long as you're in the Blood Demon Tower, you won't be able to activate your divine art or battle soul." The blood-red clothed old man laughed loudly. "What? There's such an ability?" Qin Feiyang turned pale with fright. He turned to look at King Yu and asked, "Is that true?" "Yes." King Yu nodded. "Damn it." Qin Feiyang was furious. He tried to activate his red sword soul again, but it still could not be activated. "It's useless. No one can break this ability of the Blood Demon Tower." King Yu shook his head. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists. As it turned out, it was a trap for him and Madman to enter the Blood Demon Tower. "Father, please let him go. He's our friend. When I was young, didn't you always teach me to treat my friends with sincerity?" King Yu roared. "Friends also depend on who they are. If they're our clansmen, naturally, we have to treat them well. But the dragons and humans, they're foreigners. They're our enemies. We have to be cruel to our enemies." The blood-clad old man smiled viciously. "They're different. Can I kneel and beg you?" King Yu's huge body fell to his knees with a loud thud. However, the blood-clad old man was indifferent. King Yu looked at Qin Feiyang. His eyes were filled with self-blame. "Senior King Yu, this isn't your fault." Qin Feiyang shook his head and heaved a long sigh. Then he sat cross-legged on the ground. Boom! At this moment, waves of divine consciousness shot out from the top of his head and surged toward Madman's sea of consciousness. "I'll help you," Qin Feiyang bellowed, and his divine sense frantically rushed towards the blood mist formed by the blood-red clothed old man. "Haha!" Madman laughed loudly. He also activated his divine consciousness and pounced toward the blood-clad old man. Like moths flying into a flame, his divine consciousness shattered one after another. But the two did not give up. Even if their divine consciousness was exhausted, they still had to fight the blood-clad old man to the end. The blood-clad old man shouted at King Yu, who was kneeling outside. "What are you still doing? Quickly take this opportunity to kill Qin Feiyang." King Yu lowered his head, struggling in his heart. On one side was his father. On the other side was his friend. How should he choose? Idiot, idiot. The blood-clad old man roared at Qin Feiyang and Madman. "Let's see how much divine consciousness you have. Let's see how long this artifact can protect you." An invisible battle unfolded in Madman's sea of consciousness. "I don't know either." Qin Feiyang shook his head. The ground around them was shaking, as if there was an earthquake. Boom! All of a sudden, The stone door of the Blood Demon Tower opened automatically. A terrifying suction force surged out from it. Be careful. Wang Ming and the other two people's expressions changed as they hurriedly protected Qin Feiyang and the madman behind them. At that moment, the group of people was trapped in the strong wind and huge waves like a Category 12 typhoon. However, with their cultivation, they could still withstand it. However, the evil force around them was crazily surging toward the Blood Demon Tower. If one looked down from the sky at this moment, they would see a shocking scene. The evil force in the entire Fallen Valley was surging toward the Blood Demon Tower. The endless evil force gathered together from all directions like waves of blood. The Ghost King looked at the blood-red clothed old man and asked, "Father, do you know what's going on?" However, the blood-red clothed old man was silent as he stared at the evil force that was constantly surging toward the Blood Demon Tower, with a trace of bewilderment in his eyes. "Don't be careless," Qin Feiyang reminded the madman and Wang Ming beside him, then took out a life pill and threw it into his mouth. The life pill had the effect of repairing the soul. As he silently repaired his soul, he looked around vigilantly. Roar! In the distance. Suddenly, there was a roar. This is the roar of the blood puppet. The Beast Emperor was bewildered. I can actually hear fear in their roars, Wang Ming said in disbelief. Could it be? The evil force in the entire Fallen Valley is surging toward here? Yang Li frowned. Time passed bit by bit. After about 2 hours, Yang Li suddenly pointed behind him and shouted, "Look!" Everyone turned their heads to look, and their expressions froze. The evil force was surging toward them from behind, but through the evil force, they could already see the mountains and the earth outside. Furthermore, they saw that dozens of blood puppets had lost their evil force and died on their own, turning into ashes. Could it be that the Blood Demon Tower had really absorbed all the evil force in the entire Fallen Valley? About 10 breaths later, as the last wave of evil force surged into the Blood Demon Tower, the surroundings became clear. In front of them was a barren land. Apart from the blood puppets, there were no other living creatures. However, at this moment, the blood puppets were dying on their own, turning into ashes one by one. The most important thing was, there was no longer any trace of evil force in the surrounding void. In other words, the Blood Demon Tower had indeed devoured all the evil force in the Fallen Valley. What the hell is going on? But until now no one had figured it out. Boom! Suddenly, a series of loud rumbling sounds suddenly rang out. The ground trembled even more violently. Moreover, cracks appeared on the ground. Qin Feiyang and the others hurriedly looked at the Blood Demon Tower and found that it was rising from the ground at this moment. Everyone was surprised. The blood-robed old man, who had been silent all this time, suddenly stared at the Blood Demon Tower and roared, "You can't do this, your current master is me." What? Everyone looked at the blood-robed old man suspiciously. However, the blood-robed old man turned a blind eye and stared at the Blood Demon Tower with a furious expression. Clang! It was also at this moment, another loud sound suddenly rang out. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly looked at the madman. The madman himself was also surprised. Whoosh! Suddenly, a divine light swept out from the madman's body and appeared in the sky. It was also an ancient tower. It was blood-red in color and was 100 feet tall. However, there was only one floor and it emitted a terrifying aura. Qin Feiyang asked suspiciously, "Senior brother madman, what are you?" "This is my space divine object." The madman transmitted his voice. "What? Space divine object?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and frowned. "Then why did this space divine object of yours come out by itself?" "I don't know." The madman shook his head. "You can't do this. I am your master. You can't betray me." "Stop. Otherwise the rule force will destroy you." The blood-robed old man's expression became more and more ferocious as he roared again and again. "Betray?" Qin Feiyang and the madman looked at each other with a puzzled expression. What was this old man shouting about? Wait! Suddenly, Qin Feiyang and the madman looked at each other, and the words "rule force" appeared in their minds at the same time. Immediately after, the two of them looked up at the sky. The Blood Demon Tower was a heaven-defying divine artifact. Now that such a huge commotion had occurred, wouldn't it attract the rule force? Clang! Just as Qin Feiyang and the madman were worried, accompanied by a loud sound, the space divine object of the madman actually took the initiative to rush toward the Blood Demon Tower. Immediately after, a scene that made everyone dumbfounded appeared. The madman's space divine object actually landed directly at the top of the Blood Demon Tower. As a bloody light appeared, the two actually fused together. At this moment, the Blood Demon Tower that originally only had 9 floors turned into 10. Chapter 2695. A 10-story Blood Demon Tower. Could it be? This is the complete appearance of the Blood Demon Tower? Qin Feiyang whispered. In other words, my divine spatial artifact is actually a part of the Blood Demon Tower? Madman was stunned. It seems like that should be the case. That's strange. The Blood Demon Tower is a sacred artifact of the Blood Demon race. Even if it was lost, it should be in hell. But why would it run to the ancient world and be obtained by you? Qin Feiyang frowned with a puzzled expression. You're asking me, but who should I ask? Madman rolled his eyes. After the Blood Demon Tower fused, an even more terrifying aura erupted. This is the aura of a heaven-defying divine artifact. What's going on with the Blood Demon Tower? It's actually releasing its aura? Is it provoking the power of laws? Madman's expression changed. Boom! The next moment, winds and clouds surged in the sky. The power of falling poured down like a waterfall, carrying with it an apocalyptic aura. Sure enough, it attracted the power of laws. Qin Feiyang and Madman's gazes trembled. Retreat! King Yu shouted. The group of people immediately retreated. However, after retreating a few steps, Madman stopped, and his expression became extremely ugly. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang was bewildered. Madman looked at the power of laws descending from the sky and murmured, the aura of this power of laws is locked onto me. What? It's you! Qin Feiyang was stunned. Why was the aura locked onto Madman? Shouldn't it be the Blood Demon Tower? Could it be because of Madman's divine spatial artifact? Madman was the owner of the divine spatial artifact, so the power of laws was targeted at him? What should we do now? Wang Ming and Madman were burning with anxiety. Haha. This is the consequence of betraying me. All of you go to hell. The old man in blood-red clothes retreated while laughing wildly, his eyes full of gloating. Qin Feiyang glanced at the old man in blood-red clothes, then at Wang Ming and Madman. You guys leave first. What about you guys? The two of them looked at Qin Feiyang and Madman. Rule force. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and said, we'll be fine. Let's leave quickly. All right. Wang Ming and Yang Li took a deep look at Qin Feiyang and Yang Li, then turned around and fled as fast as lightning. Sometimes, they really felt that this young lord was very foolish. But sometimes he admired him. He clearly knew that there was danger, but for his friends and brothers, he was willing to risk everything. In today's world of intrigue, it was hard to find someone like him. Rumble. In the blink of an eye, the rule force had already landed in midair. Although I don't know what's going on, I'm sure that you have some sort of relationship with the Blood Demon Tower. Quickly, it retracts its aura and enters a self-sealing state. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. Boom. Clang. Following closely, the 9-leaf fire lotus and the crimson sword soul appeared. I'm counting on you. Qin Feiyang bowed. Is he stupid? He's actually bowing to his own battle soul. The blood-red old man sneered. King Yu frowned and shouted. Father, can you shut up? What are you doing? How dare you shout at me? The blood-red old man said angrily. You don't understand Qin Feiyang at all. You don't know how terrifying these two battle souls are. Let me tell you. Even the dragon god is wary of Qin Feiyang's two battle souls. King Yu roared. What? Even the dragon god is wary of them? The blood-red old man was stunned. He frowned and said, Are you trying to fool me? King Yu said, You'll know later whether I'm fooling you or not. He couldn't be bothered to explain further. He didn't know why his father had become like this. Where did the honorable and kind-hearted father go? It felt so strange. Clang. Following Qin Feiyang's words, the two fighting souls soared into the sky, and their divine might shattered the surroundings. Boom. In an instant, the two battle souls collided with the rule force. Immediately, under the blood-red old man's shocked gaze, the rule force was instantly annihilated. This, Yi Zhong and the Beast Emperor were also shocked. In fact, they all knew that these two battle souls were very heaven-defying, because back in the inner sea, they could even block the sword light of the sovereign weapon again and again. However, they had never imagined that these two war souls would be able to destroy the Nether King's Hell's rule force so easily. At the same time, Frenzy also looked at the Blood Demon Tower and shouted, "Why aren't you entering the self-sealing state?" It seemed to be useful. The Blood Demon Tower floated in the void and quickly retracted its aura. In an instant, it entered Frenzy's body. Frenzy was stunned. He thought that after the spatial divine item merged with the Blood Demon Tower, he would lose this spatial divine item. But he didn't expect that the Blood Demon Tower would be brought over. In other words, the Blood Demon Tower chose him. In the future, he would be the owner of the Blood Demon Tower. Is this a blessing in disguise? Qin Feiyang also looked at Frenzy in astonishment. Obviously, Frenzy grinned and said, "I am now a person with a heaven-defying divine item. Let's see who dares to be arrogant in front of me in the future." Boom! In the sky, there was another loud explosion. Frenzy's expression stiffened. He looked up at the sky and saw another wave of rule force descending. Moreover, the aura was still locked onto him. It seems that it won't be easy for you to take away this heaven-defying divine item. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Frenzy said, "That depends on you." Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. This time, he didn't get any benefits from entering the Fallen Valley. It all went into Frenzy's pocket. And now, he had to help Frenzy wipe his butt. Uncomfortable. Wang Ming and Beast Soul looked at each other and lowered their heads, looking extremely respectful. Even Lunatic had a hint of respect between his brows. Only Qin Feiyang didn't have any respect. Wait a minute. There was also the young man. The young man looked at Ice Dragon with a hint of a smile in his eyes. "I'm sorry, I accidentally made some noise and startled you." Qin Feiyang looked at Ice Dragon and smiled faintly. Just as Qin Feiyang spoke, the 9-leaf fire lotus floating in the sky flew to Qin Feiyang's side with a whoosh. 9 fire lotus leaves fell off and turned into 9 fiery red shields, protecting Qin Feiyang and Lunatic inside. Accidentally, Ice Dragon's face darkened when he heard that, and he said angrily, "I think you did it on purpose. How is that possible? If it wasn't for this bullshit rule force, why would I make such a big commotion?" Qin Feiyang said, "Bullshit rule force? King Yu, Beast Emperor," and the others couldn't help but smile bitterly. Only Qin Feiyang would dare to say such contemptuous words. Ice Dragon was silent. His expression couldn't be seen, let alone know what he was thinking. "You came here personally but didn't say anything. It's not in line with your character," Qin Feiyang said. "I'll endure it." Ice Dragon let out a long breath and said in a deep voice, "You shouldn't have come to Fallen Valley, and you shouldn't have cared about the Blood Demon race." "Interesting. So you're allowed to slaughter them, but I'm not allowed to help them." Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Ice Dragon raised his eyebrows and said, "I won't talk about these useless things with you, as long as you don't regret it." What does he mean? Lunatic was suspicious. How would I know? Qin Feiyang thought to himself. Why did it feel like Ice Dragon was implying something? "That's all I have to say. You're on your own." With that, Ice Dragon disappeared without a trace. He left just like that. The group of people was stunned. They all thought that Ice Dragon would definitely be angry and even fight. However, throughout the entire process, he didn't get angry and didn't say much before leaving. What was going on? That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.